West Goshen Township Board of Supervisors, February 20th, 2018 meeting. If you would all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Folks, we'd like to announce that if you could please silence all of your cell phones and other devices during this meeting. We'd also like to announce that audience members may be using audio or videotape recordings during this meeting. It's an open meeting, so they have the right to do so, but we just want to make sure that everyone knows that before we proceed. I'd like to introduce our new solicitor who's been appointed last month, Mr. Dave Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Sanders is from the firm of the law office of Shaw & Kilkenny, and he will be our new solicitor going forward. Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Look forward to working with you.
Now I'd like to turn over the meeting to Mr. David Rubin to give us an update on Sunoco and our current case going forward.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, members of the public. On January 9th of this year, the Public Utility Commission issued a written opinion in order discontinuing the injunction in regard to drilling on the Janiac 2 site. That was precipitated because Sunoco withdrew its plans as requested in our original litigation to enforce the settlement agreement to install a safety valve there. We have filed on January 24 at the board's request a petition for reconsideration of that, seeking to basically prevent any HDD drilling until the board decides the case as a whole, because we're still trying to have them install an automatic valve on the SPLP use area under the settlement agreement, which is, we think, a promise that they made. On February 1 of this year, we submitted the written testimony of 4 experts, which will be our experts at the hearing coming up in April. Richard Krupowitz, who's been a long time consultant to the township and a safety expert, submitted written testimony with respect to the need for the safety valve in the township. And then 3 experts from Gilmore and Associates, Toby Kessler, geologist, Greg Sullivan, a geotechnical engineer, and Joseph Carlin, traffic engineer, and all of their testimony goes to debunk the testimony of Matt Gordon, a project engineer, which basically during the preliminary injunction hearings stated all the reasons why a safety valve couldn't be installed on the SPLP use area, which is near their pump station. The current schedule, in addition to outstanding discovery and motions to compel, which I won't bore you with, is for Sunoco to submit their rebuttal testimony on March 1st. West Goshen has submitted its rebuttal testimony on April 2nd, and the hearings are scheduled for April 25 and April 26 in Harrisburg. Unless that schedule changes, that's where the hearings will be, 2 days of hearings and then briefing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Rubin. Any questions from the audience? Now we'd like to go forward with the reports of the month of January 2018. I see Captain Stone here. Chief, please.
Good evening. For the month of January, calls for service were 2,126, alarms were 77, 3 of them being valid, 28 accidents. The officers drove 21,249 miles. Our selective traffic enforcement for the month of January, following roads were addressed: West Cinder Pike, Belton Lane, North New Street, North 5 Points Road, Spruce Avenue, South Concord Road, Taylor Mill Road, Airport Road, Ellis Lane. Following officers attended training during the month of January: Officer Boyle, Officer Jason McGee, Officer Story, Sergeant Gracer, Detective Maurer, Detective Sedlak, Officer Grandizio, and Officer Mann. That's all I have.
Thank you, Captain. We're going to change the schedule a little bit. I have an older schedule here. What we'd like to do now, instead of proceeding with the township reports, if it's okay, Andre, I'd like to do the presentation for the pipeline risk assessment by the Citizens Risk Assessment Initiative. I think Mr. Tom Casey's here for that. Casey. And Carolyn Hughes. How are you guys today? And we'd like to do this now so we could have Mr. Broom in here in case there's any questions that might come up. We could coordinate.
Would you like me to move the microphone over so we're not back to the audience? Is that okay?
That's fine. Any problems with that, technical problems? No, that's fine. Thank you.
My name is Caroline Hughes. I am a resident of East Goshen Township and a member of the Citizens Pipeline Risk Assessment Task Force team, which assembled out of necessity. We have watched our community land destroyed, our property seized for the sake of Sunoco's pipeline project, and know that other pipelines are coming down the line. What we have repeatedly asked is a very reasonable question as we've watched this happen. What are the risks? It is a question that has gone unanswered despite us asking as many people as we can. What are the public safety risks of these 3 natural gas liquid pipelines running mere feet from homes, from schools, from nursing homes, from community centers? What are the risks of never before used construction techniques for these highly volatile liquid pipelines to no benefit to our community? The tragedy in Florida last week has brought about a lot of heartache, a lot of discussion, and a lot of debate. One statement that has been repeated often since last Wednesday is that our children deserve to feel safe when they go to school. 40 schools along this pipeline route, many of which are in Chester County, are in the blast zone of this pipeline. My son, Aiden, goes to school at St. Peter and Paul. The pipelines run just 100 feet from his school building. He has friends at Exton Elementary, at St. Simon and Jude, at East Goshen Elementary, and other schools that are within the blast zone. They are now forced to practice yet one more evacuation drill. In the event of a leak that doesn't ignite, they are asked to evacuate on foot children ages 3 to 14 in my son's school, 400 of them, on foot 1/2 mile, upwind, depending which way the wind is blowing, and they need to determine that on that day. The Wellington Assisted Living Facility next door will have to do the same thing. In the event that a leak does ignite, emergency management officials have said in public meetings that evacuation and rescue is not an option. So I think we deserve to know exactly what that risk is. If Sunoco wants to keep reassuring us that there's nothing to worry about, I have one thing to say to them: prove it. If Sunoco wants to keep continuing with this project, making mistake after mistake, we are not only just more concerned about the project, but we are outraged that it has allowed to continue. I have a science background, and so I don't want to be reassured with statements. I want to be reassured with data and numbers and facts. I know some numbers already about this project. I know the numbers of notices of violation that have gone out on the state and federal level now. I know the number of accidents that have occurred by Sunoco, the number of wells that have been destroyed, the number of waterways that have been interrupted. The number of accidents that Sunoco has had as a company. They are the riskiest, most leakiest operator in the entire industry, by a lot. Those are the numbers that I know. I'd like to know the answer to my question, to our question, to the community's question that we keep asking. Our state government has failed us. They have failed us not only to provide and protect us from the risk assessment, they have failed us because they haven't even assessed the risk themselves. It's unfathomable to me, as a parent, as a landowner, as a community member. The PUC only requires Sunoco to show that they've done a risk assessment. The PUC is not required to review that risk assessment. It's unacceptable. Sunoco not surprisingly, won't release their own risk assessment. And so I'll repeat what I said at the very beginning, which is that this pipeline risk assessment task force occurred out of necessity. 50 citizens along the pipeline route in Chester and Delaware County, along with Senator Andy Dinniman, have assembled to procure our own publicly available risk assessment to answer that very question that we keep asking and that we cannot get an answer to from our government or from Sunoco. We are not only demanding that we get that answer, we will ensure that we will. We will not rest until we do, and we will do everything in our power to make sure that we get the appropriate answer, the fact-based answer, in a quantitative risk assessment. Sunoco may not care about the risk that is being imposed upon this community, but I do. I know that people in this room do. I know that the board does. And I know that their PR firm has paid a lot of money to placate us, to make statements that sound good, but it doesn't work. We want numbers, we want the facts, we want data, and we're going to get it. Our risk assessment task force has community members with a variety of appropriate backgrounds of engineering, law, science, earth science, chemistry. They have executive experience, education backgrounds, healthcare backgrounds, and so on. We've divided into 4 groups: fundraising, of which I am on the fundraising committee, risk assessment, procurement, legislative, and community outreach. We're meeting regularly and planning very, very carefully to make sure that this is done in an appropriate way to find out the answers that we seek and to find them out in an analytical way. I'd like to now introduce Tom Casey, who is heading our risk assessment procurement team, and he will discuss the details of the risk assessment itself.
Good evening. So, as Caroline stated, I am heading up the risk assessment committee. I'm facilitating it. I'm not running it. We've had a strict set of guidelines regarding who has input into the RFP. We only had 2 qualified engineers who developed the RFP. My job was simply to facilitate this, to make sure things were moving forward. So we are all aware of the known risks, including the inability of companies like Sunoco to do their projects safely and legally. Utilizing known data factors, we hope to be able to compare and contrast our findings with what we may or may not already know, and then to give the answers to the public who has been demanding this assessment to be run. And then all in the hopes to answer the question I've heard for 4 years: what do I do? I've heard it at every single meeting, every single township, every mass event that has occurred, and that has gone unanswered. Next slide, please. So on this first night, we got together, we split into groups, and everybody went to where their heart felt the need to go. I went to the assessment. We had a few township officials who joined us that evening. We had emergency management personnel and many people that had a background in engineering. And we developed 3 main criteria that answered 3 main questions: life, property, and environment. Life deals with as many measurable impacts as possible, both loss of life and quality of life. Property, of course, destruction, loss of homes, loss of business, loss of revenue. We also have insurance issues that come from that if you're an HOA. Environment is pretty self-explanatory. We hope to be able to look into many of these things which have already been studied, but we're willing to look as in-depth as possible into this. depending on how much money we can raise. So what is risk? It's a question that is hard to answer because everybody has a different perspective on it. Risks are both known and unknown commodities. Sometimes we are okay with the level of risk we are exposing ourselves to, while other times we are not okay with the levels when they are outside our comfort zones. The third box speaks directly to what Sunoco is doing now. They are intentionally exposing our community to an interaction without being honest about their information. This causes communities to be uncertain. It also may speak to Sunoco's own uncertainty with regards to the risks they have assessed, but we just don't know that because they won't release the information. Risk realized. Prime example of this is 2012 Sissonville, West Virginia explosion near Interstate 77. The public was exposed to a potential danger, an unforeseen danger, and the company exposed the public to a risk with their intentional interaction with uncertainty by not inspecting or testing this line for 24 years. The difference between a hazard and a risk. Hazards are specific things we have identified. Risks are the assessed probability of harm from those hazards. An example would be a knife on a table. The adult sees a knife on the table as a hazard, and they assess the risks. A 3-year-old child sees the same knife, yet is not as well equipped to assess that risk. The child picks up the knife, and we snatch it away. That's the reactive approach. Or the adult has assessed the risks of having the knife on the table and removes it before the child comes to harm. That's the proactive approach. The child does not have the capability to assess all the probable risks. The adult does. And that is what this assessment will provide. The next slide is the process in which we've determined that we're going to operate, where this gives a clear example of what it is we're doing, how we're going about it. We have the bipartisan review process, which we have both Democrat and Republican senators involved. We also have emergency management input from the county level. I've spoken to emergency management personnel from various degrees, and they all have questions as well, specifically about the risks that Mariner 1 poses, because they have not seen that information. Once we agree upon the acceptance criteria, we then go through the QRA process, which is outlined in the RFP that we have, and we assess all the consequences involved. And then we look at the individual risks. And from there, we can go into the societal risks. So me and my neighbors. So the QRA package, we're going to use nationally recognized industry vendors to assess this for us. We have, we've already reached out to several of them and provided our RFP to them. At this time, we're not sharing that information with the companies that we've used, nor the RFP information, simply because at this point we consider it to be proprietary to what we're doing, but more importantly, because if Sunoco gets their hands on that information, they'll know exactly what we're doing. And to be quite frank, they don't have the right to know what we're doing because they've failed to share with us. So we will be releasing this information to the public and to any of our municipal partners once we've engaged with a company. And we will be using a nationally recognized company, and we do have a list of about 10 of them that we've looked at. These slides continue just to lay out the generic information that we're looking at. They just give a general overview of the types of things we're investigating, what we felt or what we have heard from public comments across the last 4 years. Then we get into the unknowns. This slide talks about emergency service, how they have a point-specific contingency plan. That's been made clear. When I asked the question, what happens if there's a 6-mile long event that occurs? These pipelines are being drilled down 100 feet plus. In between valve stations, if they put the one in West Goshen to the next one in Thornbury, is 6.2 miles. If there's an event between there with the fractures that exist in the ground and the frac outs that have occurred along the path, the gas can escape along any point during that. It can also, if there's a rupture at the bottom of the line, start to fill up the cavity of the pipeline. And if we're dealing in, say, West Whiteland with this problem, with all the karsts, that gets out into the aquifer, they get into the caverns and the craters that are there, and this gas can travel for miles. So this is a concern of ours, and from what we can tell, this has never been looked at, this potential. And we believe that this would also give our emergency service personnel the ability to know their region and what the potential risks are, and to be able to evaluate for that. And this slide here just shows a simple continuation of what it is we're looking for. And we can make this presentation available on the township's website as well, so citizens can review that. The next we have is the impacts to infrastructure. And this is where a township needs to really consider what it is we're dealing with here. If there's a break along any of this route, we have sewer lines, we have stormwater drains, and we have, like I said earlier, the karst topography, and we have the aquifers. If those get filled up, or there's an issue, what's the impacts to infrastructure, and how's that going to impact zoning? West Goshen currently has a massive 600 home development going in. Would it not be prudent, or would it not be better for the developer to know what it is they may be dealing with if a pipeline is being routed through? It will change the dynamic of the neighborhood severely, because they want a 50-foot wide swath or more. These charts are examples of certain information we can gather from doing a risk assessment. They determine the risk factors, what we can learn from our process. These are just examples from other work previously done. Now I'd like to bring Caroline back up as the chair of the Finance Committee to explain the process that we are using to collect funds and how they will be secured.
So the big question becomes, well, how are we going to fund this? And that is a big question and a big responsibility, and one that we take very seriously. So the members of our assessment team who are on the fundraising aspect of the team have all had fundraising experience of varying levels, and we looked at a variety of options. We wanted to find a crowdsourcing site that would allow us to reach out to the public for individual donations, to allow them to feel like they are invested in a part of the project, and remain transparent with them throughout the process. We wanted to do that while using a crowdfunding site that had minimal transaction fees, and then also looking at accounting options. So we went with GoFundMe, which has to date, we're closing in just a couple of weeks of small individual donations that have amounted to almost $20,000. So in just a couple of weeks' time, I think that shows the level of response that the community is wanting this project to occur. However, small donations will not be the way that we reach $80,000 to $100,000, and so we will be looking at other options. The question then becomes, well, who's going to manage that money? Clean Air Council has generously offered to be our fiscal agent. They are a 50, excuse me. They are allowing us to hold their money, or to hold the money, and they will be doing all of the accounting for us. They will report. They will not charge us anything for doing so. And people can also donate directly to the Clean Air Council, in which case it is a tax-deductible donation. If people decide to send a check to the Clean Air Council, they have to put risk assessment in the memo so that they can track the money. But beyond that, there is a link on their website that will allow you to donate directly to the Citizens Risk Assessment Fund. So then how are we going to go about the process of getting the payment to the vendor that we end up using? We decided, again, in an effort to be as transparent and methodical as possible, have a multi-step process from the risk assessment team coming together to ask for the funds, whether it's for a down payment or final payment. They will then present me with an invoice. I will then present it to Clean Air Council, and then they will send the funds to the appropriate vendor. So they will also give us reporting. I will then also be reporting to the immediate risk assessment group and also to the community on a regular basis. As we said in the bottom here, Clean Air Council will not hold responsibility for developing the study or influencing the outcome in any way. It is truly a citizens procured and developed risk assessment.
So why do this? On December 20th, citizens met with Governor Wolf to ask him to do a risk assessment per PA Title 35. He has not done it yet, so the citizens have decided to get this risk assessment done on their own. After countless public presentations and meetings with Sunoco officials, it has come to our attention that we are not being told the truth. They claim that they are under the strictest of standards, but are they being followed? The residents of PA have heard all the rhetoric regarding following it or exceeding federal requirements. We are not convinced. Sunoco has demonstrated their inability to follow the rules with their current project. It is time for the truth. Federal guidelines are woefully inadequate to maintain or ensure our safety, and as well as state guidelines. One such concern is the ability for PHMSA to want to perform its duties. On January 11, 2018, PHMSA sent a notice of probable violation of Title 49 for pipeline safety in installations in Ohio. Upon inspecting the pipe that was strung out, the PHMSA inspector observed numerous coating scrapes on at least 5 segments of pipe. Several segments of pipe had severe coating damage, and at least one joint of a pipe had a gouge that extended into the wall of the pipe. These deficiencies were not marked as rejected as per federal regs, and it was further determined that the field bends complied with only the company's regulations, not the federal guidelines. A quote from the order: "Therefore, Sunoco failed to provide adequate inspection of the field bending of pipe during the ME2 project to ensure compliance with 195.212. Penalties could be upwards of $200,000 per day." The order also said, "We have reviewed the circumstances and supporting documents involved in this case and have decided not to propose a civil penalty assessment at this time." So essentially they got away with another one. The benefits of doing such an assessment and having it be a citizen-based initiative: we have the assumed benefits that have been told to us through reporting $9 billion and so forth. We have the assurances of trust us. I think this board can attest to the fact that trusting them is not a good option. Then we have the actual benefits. Their financial benefit report failed to account for any negative inputs. This is not yet fully unknown for the general public, the actual risks. Understanding so that people and elected officials can get better knowledge base to determine the risk factors, and then the facts. Now the question, what do I do, or how does this affect me, can get answered. At this time, I'd like to, if I may, just pass this out to the board. There's about 6 or 7 copies there. I just want to give a simple update. I'm sure Mr. Bruman's aware of this, that the Commonwealth Court ruled today against the ordinance case. They chose to side with Sunoco on that case. So I'd like to read this statement to be put into the public record. Today, the Commonwealth Courts affirmed that the residents of Pennsylvania are irrelevant. There is no remedy for a citizen, taxpayer, before any legal, legislative, or administrative branch of government in the state of Pennsylvania for landowners to be able to uphold their rights. This is telling as to the power of money in politics, which helps to destroy the lives of citizens for corporate greed. The PUC, the DEP, and Governor Wolf have let the people down. In the judge's decision, it states, while it may be true that the PUC has no regulations covering pipeline siting, this is irrelevant. My family is here to tell you we are not irrelevant, and this decision, along with the subsequent lack of caring by state agencies, proves beyond a doubt that the citizens' risk assessment must be achieved so that we can learn the truth behind the risks we are being forced to live with. At this point, I'd like to thank the board for allowing us to present, and then I'd like to open up for some questions if possible.
Thank you, Mr. Casey. Are there any questions from the audience? Yes, ma'am. If you could come up and please identify yourself. Thank you.
Question I have as far as the...
I'm sorry, can you state your name
Yes,
for the
I'm sorry.
record?
Tina Smith. The question I have would basically be centered around when if the funding goes through, when the risk assessment will start. What's the commencement date? And then how long do you think the risk assessment will take? And how will that impact Sunoco's operations? Because I'm thinking if you can't, they go ahead and proceed with the construction and they're done, and you get your risk assessment after it's completed, it kind of defeats the purpose.
Okay. The answer is that the purpose of this risk assessment is to actually know the risk. We don't know them. So whether Sunoco moves forward with their project or not is not the point. It's the fact that we need to understand these risks, and we have a right to know. We have a right to know based on the information regarding our state agencies, our federal agencies that are refusing to give oversight. And so we have, at the ground level, have a right to understand this. Now, as far as the risk assessment moving forward, we currently have enough money to begin this process. Most companies want 5, 10%. We have that money. We can start the process. But to do a full-blown risk assessment like we'd like to do, and that not only the citizens have a right to understand, but the municipal partners would also have the right to understand. We need more money. And so we'd like to do this and then do something that's never been done and make that information publicly available to anyone who wants it. So as far as how long the process takes, to answer that part of your question, once we engage with a vendor, we can begin and get a generic sense of return of information within a few weeks. To do a full-blown assessment where we look at all infrastructure problems, we look at point-specific, we are hoping that we can do 3 assessments in Chester County, we can do 3 assessments in Delaware County, we can branch out into Lancaster and Lebanon counties if we need to, if we can get enough municipal partners on, so that we can look at a point-specific spot. And then if we need to, if another community along the line would also like to know, and we can add that in. It's only a matter of inputting some data into the system and a few dollars more in the process. Our estimate right now is $50,000 to $100,000, and that's dependent solely on the amount of information we're asking. So the more partnerships we get and the more money we're collecting, the more information we're learning. But right now, we currently have enough funds to begin this process, and we have already engaged with several vendors with our RFP to get started on this process. So I hope that answers your question.
I just want to add that project moving forward or not, emergency management planning for this project is essential. And emergency management personnel have not been given the resources that they need to properly plan. So this risk assessment also seeks to help them become efficient and also to educate the community on what to do in the event of an emergency. Think of how many people in this community have no idea what to do, have no idea really what's even running through the pipelines, and what to do in the event of an emergency. In the event of an emergency, what's our first reaction? To pick up the phone, to get in the car and go? Those are things that can put the whole community at risk. I've sat in many township meetings over the past year, and I've heard emergency management personnel, people high up in emergency management planning, say things like, well, if there's a leak, I'll walk up to the marker and call and find out what to do. That puts us all at risk. And so this risk assessment is necessary in many cases, and it's never a done deal. This project is not a done deal. We are hoping that this risk assessment will show that this project is not worth the risk to our community, that our state government will be left with no choice but to do the right thing.
Yes, sir, if you can please go on.
I'm Kurt Wise, and given the understanding that Sunoco has done a risk assessment, I'm wondering, first of all, did they pass it on to the legislature? I don't recall hearing if they had. And has their legislature in turn then refused to publicize it? And finally, who did or why did Sunoco do a risk assessment at all? And what drove that?
Okay, I can answer that question. It's pretty simple. They're required to, by federal law, to provide a risk assessment. They did provide one to the Public Utility Commission. The problem that we face as residents, as citizens, is that the government has a unique ability to simply deem something national security and not release it to us. So that is part of the reason why the citizens have determined that we need to understand the risks. We deserve to know because we're the ones who are being asked to live with this, but not fully understand. And they did provide a risk assessment. There were several people from both Delaware County, Chester County Emergency Service that were allowed to see it. They had to sign a non-disclosure form, and they weren't allowed to make copies of it, and they didn't see the entire thing. So when people who have seen this assessment are now talking to us and saying that there's information that they'd like to know, that concerns me greatly as a layperson here, as somebody who's been involved with this for 4 years. If our emergency service personnel who are responsible for doing this have concerns, then so should we. So they have not revealed what's in it. That's one thing that I refuse to listen, even if they wanted to tell me, because I will not put them at that risk. But they have said they have some concerns and other things that they would like to know. So to answer, I hope that answers your question. They are required to give it, They're just not required to show it to us.
I'll just add one more thing, that they are required to show that they've done it to the PUC. The PUC does not have to review it. So that's a key thing to underscore. And then again, just to underscore what Tom said, they did not provide the entire risk assessment to our emergency management personnel. So they've not provided a complete picture. We intend to do that.
Any other questions, folks? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Bobby Lewis, and I live on Nottingham Drive. And this is the kind of question that I really, really hate to ask. But after we've been through everything that we've been through, and we know how things can turn out, what options, or what are you asking for in the risk assessment, or in the acquisition of a vendor, that will guarantee that this person has no conflict of interest with Sunoco? In other words, has Sunoco bought them off?
Well, that's a good question, and that was something that the risk committee thought of on that first evening when we met. And it was important for us to understand that the likelihood of us running into a company that has no specific conflict or paid off it's unlikely it will find that company, because the industry works with many companies. So what we decided was we're going to try to avoid that and go straight to industry respected and companies that PHMSA themselves also use to get their information from. And it's not necessarily a problem for a vendor who may have had work or done work, or because that's their bread and butter, that's what they do. We can't assume that they're going to all be bad. However, we're doing our best to make sure that not only are we using these companies that are recognized by our federal government for their work, but that they're also widely used by anyone. Some of these companies have done risk assessments for individuals, or have done it for other smaller scale issues. So, not that this one is a small scale, but so we've done our homework, and we've allowed the engineers involved in the process to do their job without input from lay people like myself, because I don't know who to use. They do. And our two engineers, both, one has 10 years experience in aerospace engineering, and the other has 26 years of experience in the industry, working for various companies. So we're confident that they can make that call. So you had a second part of your question. I don't remember.
Well, I think essentially you addressed the question
Okay.
of whether or not an independent assessment is really going to be independent and has no connection with Sunoco.
Right. It's
Or no allegiance to Sunoco.
allegiance is the I think the more important word. Connection is one thing, allegiance is the other. And the companies that we're looking for are wide ranging. So we're confident that we've assessed and done this properly. And we'll also, with anyone, again, this information will be made public once we get this ball rolling. We're just not releasing it right now, because if we do that, then the thing that you're fearing could actually occur. Because they could then put pressure on these companies that we're looking at to use. So we're trying to avoid that at all costs.
I'm not sure I understood you correctly, but I think you said that once the vendor is selected, that will be made public?
Yes, once we start the process.
Then they're a perfect target for Sunoco.
No, because once we enter into a contract with this vendor, then they owe us professionally. It would not look good upon them in the professional realm to enter into a contract and then turn around and do what you're suggesting. So, you know, we're doing our best to make sure that this happens. We're also going to be working with any of our municipal partners. Right now, we have potentially 4 to 6 townships that have already expressed interest in wanting to know more about what we're doing, because they are caring about their residents at the ground level. And they've recognized that the state agencies are not looking out for us. So.
I just want to add that Middletown Coalition for Community Safety did their own hazards assessment of a smaller area, and people that are involved in this project were involved in that assessment in coming up with the calculations. And it's publicly available on the Middletown Coalition for Community Safety website, nccs.org. And I say that only because when they published that report, Sunoco did not refute it in any way. The results were pretty damning. So the question becomes, why did they not come out immediately and discredit it? And the answer is likely because the conservative numbers that they put in an effort to not look inflammatory is much less than what the reality is. So you can look at that. So I guess my point is twofold. My point is that people are involved in this project that have been through a similar, smaller scale assessment, and that was one that Sunoco, you know, they're very quick to come out with a refuting statement. That's one that they didn't. So you can draw your own conclusion.
Any other questions, folks? Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Caroline, for your presentation.
Does the board have any questions for us?
Well, I think what we'd like to do, because we do have an interest, is meet on this, to have some information. I'm assuming what you want is participation. You've already said that, from different townships, and potentially you have some townships that are interested. So I take it that nobody's really taken the plunge in as far as townships, but what we would like to do is meet. I have reached out to Senator Denneman's office through our township manager. We'd like to sit down and have some of the details, because it's not just, as you know, our money, it's the taxpayers' money. So we want to have some questions answered, see how this money would be distributed, who your vendor is, check that out, do our due diligence. But we are interested. We thank you for your time, and we will be in touch.
Was there, I provided the board with a package of information. Was that sufficient?
I did see the package, but we all have to go over it, get our legal counsel involved, and meet, do our due diligence, and then come upon a decision.
Okay. All right, well,
Thank you.
I want to thank the board for allowing
Thank you
us
for the opportunity.
to speak.
Thank you very much. Okay, folks, with that said, Mr. Bruman is going to be leaving. We thank you, Mr. Bruman, for coming and filling us in. For your wise counsel. Thank you. Get back to the reports. We have Andrea Testa, ready to give us the Goshen Fire Company Fellowship Ambulance Company report. Thank you.
Thank you. For the month of January, there were a total of 39 inspections, 13 commercial use non-heat, 3 fire blocking, 6 sprinkler, 2 fire life safety, 1 fire alarm, 1 re-inspection, 3 framing, 5 sprinkler breaks, and 5 fire extinguisher placements. There were 5 fire calls for the month, 1 fire alarm, 1 grill fire, 2 car fires, and 1 house fire. I attended 3 meetings, I gave 2 fire safety presentations, and I locked up 1 Knox box. Goshen Fire Company had 19 calls for the month. Good Fellowship Ambulance had 111 calls for the month, and Westchester Fire Department had 23 calls.
Thank you. Next report, we have the building officials report presented by building official John Beswick.
For the month of January, there was 157 total permits. 6 single-family dwellings, 20 utility, 30 electrical, 13 fire protection, 20 HVAC, 23 plumbing, 3 roofing, 2 zoning, 12 leasing occupancies, 1 E&S, 8 sewer tapping connections, 8 open spaces, and 3 grid occupancies. The estimated cost of construction was $7,246,670.83, and the permit fees were $89,267.02. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Just so that we can all see and hear you. You'd like to want to go ahead and put the microphone back here so it's easier for you.
Eric, you still have that on camera with that thing?
Yeah, it's still
Does
visible.
that work?
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, now we have the Board of Supervisors announcements. The first announcement on the agenda is discussion of Township Employee Recognition Program. We've been actively working on a new employee recognition program. I've mentioned this before. We have some township employees that have been working diligently for the township for over 40 years, some of them. And there hasn't been in place a township recognition program for their employees. Also a reward type program, a recognition program for innovative ideas. These are things that we're working on actively. Right now we're in discussion mode, but we're coming pretty close to being able to present a new policy. So we're just giving a heads up on that. Second item we have on the agenda is a letter regarding the Sunoco Mariner 2 project. Specifically, it's in regards to Sunoco's, there was an article in the Daily Local News a few weeks ago. And long story short, Mr. Jeff Shields, the spokesman for Sunoco, said some things that we felt were pretty misleading regarding our township and where we stand as far as the project and our current litigation. So for the record, I'm just going to read this letter in that all of the supervisors unanimously back up. The recent statements made by Sunoco spokesman Jeff Shields to the Daily Local News regarding West Goshen Township and Sunoco's safety practices mislead and mischaracterize the current predicament West Goshen residents find themselves in due to Sunoco's irresponsible breach of contract with the township. If safety remains Sunoco's top priority, it should cease with its deceptive rhetoric and ensure West Goshen residents that safety in its construction and operational activities is paramount. We find it repugnant that Sunoco continues to reference a previous West Goshen safety review that was based on Sunoco's earlier construction and installation pipeline plans. Sunoco continues to use this safety review as the linchpin for its actions and its plans. However, Sunoco conveniently leaves out numerous facts necessary for appropriate public context. For clarification, West Goshen's previous study reviewed Sunoco's infrastructure plans. It did not review Sunoco's operational activities. It is these same operational activities that have resulted in multiple inadvertent returns of drilling fluid and aquifer intrusion throughout Pennsylvania, including our region here. Second, Sunoco fails to mention that West Goshen Township's consultant only studied Sunoco's previous plans in relation to the township, not the entire pipeline region. Third, no independent agency has conducted a pipeline safety review or risk assessment. Fourth, West Goshen's previous safety review, and this is important, folks, included a recommendation of the installation of a safety valve at a precise location. This installation and location were contractually agreed upon by both the township and Sunoco. Sunoco breached the agreement by attempting to install the safety valve elsewhere. The township objected. Now Sunoco has completely removed the promised safety valve from its new plans. Sunoco's broken promises have led to costly litigation and a continued burden on our residents. We will continue to fight for the safety of the residents and our township until Sunoco honors its agreement. In the meantime, we request that Sunoco stop using our township's good name to promote its false rhetoric. Respectfully yours, the West Goshen Board of Supervisors. As you you heard from Mr. Broman beforehand, our litigation continues, so we will keep you updated as we go along. The next item on the Board of Supervisors announcements is the appointment of our township solicitor. As I introduced to you before, Mr. David Kramer from the law firm of Sean Kilkenny. We didn't have our original planned selection process. We were to have a 4-month period, have bids, collect them, go through our due diligence, and pick the best candidate we could for you as solicitor for our tax-paying dollars, the best service that we can get. Unfortunately, after making that announcement, not too long thereafter, the law firm of Skip Bryant, who served this township for 33 years, decided to give us approximately 2.5 weeks' notice. And they were leaving. They were welcome to participate in the selection process, decided not to. But we were not deterred. We ended up doing the best we could. We got 12 very qualified law firms throughout the region. We went through a selection process, narrowed it down to 5, and we spent the entire day doing interviews. Ms. Lizzotta, myself, and Derek Thomas. And we came up with the best possible results. We're very pleased to announce the law firm of Sean Kilkenny, which has actually resulted in some tax-paying dollar savings to you also, because their rates are cheaper. So welcome aboard again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it.
Also
Can I
with
just,
us,
can I just share one other piece of that process? Ms. Lizzotta, Mr. Pielli, they conducted the interviews on behalf of the board members. And what was prepared for us were videotapes that Derek took during the interview, so that we each had an opportunity to meet these people through a video camera, unfortunately. But it did give us the opportunity to thoroughly evaluate the questions that were asked of them and the answers that they provided, because it was a consistent Q&A process, which was very helpful in allowing us to make our decision as well and be fully informed before we made a decision as to who to select. So I just wanted to share that with you and sharing the transparency of the process, because we were put on very short notice to achieve a completion of this process before we arrived here today.
thank you, Rob. I apologize for missing it, because that is important to know that every one of us had our say in this and was involved in the process. The next announcement, it's not on the agenda.
Mr. Chair?
Sure.
Under Township Supervisor's announcements, there is a questionnaire being circulated now for the comprehensive plan. I would like everybody to take note of that and please respond to it. It's very important. The committee on the that's doing the comprehensive plan meets every month, and they want your input. The second thing is, on July 21st, we're running a bus trip down to Philadelphia to see the new American Revolution Museum, and this is being sponsored by the Historical Commission. If you're interested, please see Ken Lear in our recreation department.
Thank you.
And my announcements.
Thank you. So,
How is the survey being circulated?
It's being sent to every, it's already been mailed to every house, and individual apartments should be getting it in the next 2 days. We're dropping them off to all the apartment complexes.
Okay,
And
because
it's on the website as well.
apartment complexes still have not received the newsletter.
Your apartment complex is not, we dropped them off.
I don't
and they
know
have-
why.
Your management did not participate. I don't know why. We gave them to them, so I don't know.
Well, hit the website.
And it's on the
But
website.
the
as well.
survey will come to me, that's what I'm curious about, because I have not gotten any other communication from the township for the last 6 months, a year.
That's
I've
your-
been asking
that's
for.
your
That's
management.
not our management, they have dealt with this. So anyway, as long as I get the survey, that will
we'll be
be
glad to look
satisfactory.
into that.
And you can also take it online on our website.
Oh, good, okay.
It is available online. I believe it's available now.
It's been posted for about
Yeah.
5 days.
Well, having spoken about the solicitor, officially, we have to vote the new solicitor in an open meeting. So,
I'll make a motion for you.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Now it's official.
Thank you very much. Official. Appreciate it.
Clap for that.
Okay, not on the agenda, but on Board of Supervisors announcements, but something I did want to announce. We did have an executive session today at approximately 6:15 with Mr. Bruman and the entire Board of Supervisors, along with our township management staff. Also, I'd like to announce that, mark your calendars. I'm not sure if this is on our website, so if it is, great. If not, if we can put it on there. There is a run for Richie, to remember Richie, and that is for a police officer, a sergeant.
Yes.
And perhaps Captain Stone, you could speak to that. We have that every year, and it is on March 24th. I believe it's at 2 p.m. at the VFW post on Lincoln Avenue. And it's a great cause. He did pass away, unfortunately, from a form of brain cancer that they're still doing studies on. It's well worth your time. So if you can make it, please mark your calendars on March 24th, and we'll be sure to put it on our website.
2 p.m.
2 p.m. The VFW. You remember that.
Chris, I do believe the Darren Dalton Foundation will be joining us this year also, so I'm being told several of the older Philly players will be there also for the entire race, the entire event, so.
And for those of us who knew Sergeant Richard Geiger, he was one heck of a police officer. He was a great employee for the township. So once again, I urge you guys to get involved in that. It is Run to Remember Richie. So if you Google Run to Remember Richie, it will come up to sign up. And from what I understand, the 5K is $35. And there's a mile walk too, if you just want to walk. It's $35. Okay, moving on to the next issue I'd like to speak to is our Traffic Safety Commission, which consists of Mr. Bob Stratton, Bob, Dr. White, Sergeant Greiser, who's in the back there, and my eyes are not as good as they should be. I should be wearing my glasses, sorry. And Chief Gleason, we all got together, and there's 20 different stop sign intersections that we are looking to improve, and we've decided what those improvements are going to be. We'll be making that official announcement soon, probably be on our website. We're hoping that we continue this trend going forward. It was a very small budget this year of just $30,000. Whatever's left over from the traffic enhancement will be going towards more enforcement for police officers, because we all believe that more enforcement and traffic is one of the best deterrents for safety. And that's what this is about. It's about safety. So look for that going forward. Any other township supervisor announcements? Mary?
No,
Okay, that's it. Moving next, we'll go to the township manager's announcements. Mr. Casey Lalonde.
Just one issue that we need to discuss and make a decision on tonight. Because of our meeting schedule now, our May meeting will conflict with election night. So we need to, it's the second, start Thursday. So we need to come up with an alternate date. We've already agreed in the past to move the September meeting to the 20th of September. So if you want to look at your calendars, you don't have to make the decision tonight. 27th, that's our count. 22nd, 29th. So if you want to get back to me, we'll get that advertised.
We will do that. Thank you very much for bringing that to our attention.
That's it, thank you.
Okay, now we have the zoning officer's announcements. Mr. Webb, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With regards to the zoning hearing board, we will be having a reorganization meeting on March 8th, at which time we now have an application. So the zoning hearing board will have their first piece of the pie for 2018. I'll present to the board to make a decision as to whether you would wish to send Mr. Sanders to represent the township to take a position on the application. The application is at 825 South Church, which is by Westchester University. It is 84-58K, which basically says that if you are it's a non-conforming use on a non-conforming lot with a non-conforming building. Therefore, the zoning ordinance under the non-conformity section says you cannot expand, alter the building. The gentleman that purchased the building in question is actually a twin. That is why it is a non-conforming building, because non-conforming use, because we do not allow twins in the R3 zoning district. It's a non-conforming lot because the lot is only 14,072 square feet. The minimum lot size in that zoning district is 18,000 square feet. It is a non-conforming building because it's a twin and sits on the property line. The applicant had purchased the property. He does own some student housing. He purchased it. He was made full aware that he would not be allowed to do student housing there because it's not in the R4 zoning district, which he had no intentions of doing. He said that he spent a lot of money on this property and is rehabbing it because his parents are elderly and he's going to put them there. The purpose of the addition is a 260 square foot addition off the rear of the property. And that's to put a bedroom so that they wouldn't have to go upstairs. So they would have first floor living. The hearing will take place, it's going to be advertised. The hearing will take place on March 8th. And if the board so desires to take a position, Mr. Sanders could come and plead our case before the zoning hearing board. If not, I would advise the zoning hearing board at the meeting that the township is taking a position on the matter. So I just need to know what the board's desire would be on that matter.
Can you just repeat the street?
Sure, it's 825 South Church.
South Church. Thanks.
Well, I think it would be a good idea to have Mr. Sanders do it personally. I don't know if we have to put that to a vote or a motion. Yes. Yes. I would go to make that motion, Mr. Sanders attend that. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and I apologize to Mr. Rick Craig because we went out of order. Were you?
I'm sorry, I had more.
Okay.
Sorry. Before the board this evening, I presented two ordinances. Mr. Pielli and Ms. Lasota were in the meeting we had with Mr. Sanders with regards to creating an ordinance to require resale certificates and an ordinance to require rental inspections. We would deal with them on two separate matters. The reason that they were brought, I had a conversation with Mr. Lalonde, we've talked a few times over the past few years because we had issues over the past few years. And generally we created ordinances because we had issues. I probably receive telephone calls from realtors maybe once every 2 weeks or so, inquiring how they schedule a resale inspection. And to their delight, they find out that we don't have that. A lot of townships do. So when I wrote this ordinance, I basically mirrored, the rental ordinance mirrors the resale ordinance. Basically, I went in and referenced just common things within the property maintenance code that are health and safety issues. Things such as smoke detectors, handrails, carbon monoxide detectors for new construction. It's not required for old, but it's recommended. We would not require that. Insect screens, homes on wells, they would have to provide a test that the water's potable. With regards to, excuse me, losing my train of thought here. And one of the biggest things that I found in past employment with townships that did require these things were we can find infiltration that's costing us money at the sewer plant because people have their sump pumps connected into the sewer line, or they have broken pipes in their front yard for their vent and their trap for the sewer, where the rainwater is just running down. I actually found them today in West Whiteland Township that I notified West Whiteland to contact that property. So I put this ordinance for you guys. If you choose to, then we could let it move forward with it. I will submit it to the Chester County Planning Commission for review, and then we can have it back to you at a future date. Unfortunately, I will not be at the March meeting. I will be attending a training conference for my continuing education. So we could, if we want to hold off, we would talk further. I just want to put those before you guys.
I actually have two questions, if I may. I noticed that the resale certificate only only refers to residential structures. What about commercial structures?
We already do, we already do commercial.
My second question is it covers transfer of ownership, which most people assume it has to do with a sale of property. What about transfers of ownership through death, divorce, and gifting? Would that also fall in under the transfer? And since those kinds of transfers are not done through a realtor, those individuals will probably not know that they're required to go through this.
In previous townships that I worked for, they did require that, because the attorneys the title companies that are doing these transfers are generally aware of what municipalities require a resale certificate, a transfer certificate, basically.
I know, but you do not need a title company to transfer title if you're just transferring it via a deed from the state to the beneficiaries, or from a husband and wife just as one individual if upon divorce. So I'm not saying we should excuse that. I'm just bringing that to your attention that we're going to have to get this information out to our residents so that they're aware of it.
I would think maybe upon the transfer with a divorce situation, more than likely, the occupant, if the occupant is staying in the home and they're not moving out, generally this would, I would think that this would be more for, I've listed my home with an agent, or I've done it for sale by owner, and I'm transferred to a completely new person who's moving in. But I think that that's certainly a good point.
So then you're saying that the township would just, you have to understand, I'm a tax attorney, everything's particular, specifics. So it says transfer of ownership, to me that encompasses every kind of transfer of ownership. So if we're going to differentiate, or if the township is going to allow certain transfers to not fall in under that description, then we need to put that in there.
Absolutely, no, I would agree. I had started this ordinance under the old solicitor, and I did forward this to Mr. Shannon to take a look at, because certainly I'll miss things from a legal perspective. And that's great.
Just bring it.
It's a great point. No,
Thank you.
it's a great point, because obviously if someone's already living there, and it's a divorce situation, and one of the owners is coming off, then there's no sense for us to go out there and do an inspection and charge them a fee to come out and do that inspection.
Thank you for after this.
Yeah, I have some comments on that also. I think it's discriminatory against the people moving out, because in those cases, when they're moving, the new people are coming in with an inspector, and if it's an FHA, they also have their own FHA inspector, and they're having, now next door could be a shack, and nothing happens there. So, and in most cases, different municipalities I know, they gotta hire more inspectors to do the work, and this can run the cost up here too.
To the point about hiring additional inspectors, I did bring that up in the meeting that we had with our new solicitor. Mr. Craig is my supervisor, and I am licensed to do these type of inspections, and I'm willing to share the workload with our current inspection team. I think we're at the position where we could probably only have to do these 1, maybe 2 days a week, and it wouldn't be an all-day thing. So I certainly have the background that I can assist with these as well, where we wouldn't have to hire additional staff.
But we do have a lot of transactions in West Goshen.
Oh, yeah.
That's been a big asset for our budget over here. And so I just think it's discriminatory against the people who are moving. And because just about everybody's getting an inspection when they come in and get things fixed up. I don't think we have to do it that way again.
Mr. Webb, I had a question. If just for the audiences, who do we have currently that's licensed and able to do these types of inspections?
It would be actually the entire codes department, myself, Mr. Beswick, Andrea, and Ed.
And Mr. Sanders, have you had a chance to take a look at this yet?
We are in the process of reviewing
Okay,
this.
so why don't we table this to next month, give our council, since new council's on board, take a look at it, maybe look into some of those suggestions that Mary said.
Yeah, I've taken some notes, Mr. Chairman.
Excuse me.
And we'll, we could,
May I make a comment?
yes.
I need to go for my
Yes.
You might be doing the same thing, I might have the same question I have.
My name is Walt Wills. I just want to make a comment. I think it's unnecessary overreach of the township to do those inspections. In a comment.
Okay. Thank you.
My name is Bob Shaw, I live in the township. Also, are you going to put what I'm more interested in, is there going to be a time frame on this? Because if I'm selling a house or something like that, I can't be hung up waiting a lot of times for all different inspections, stuff like that. You know, to curtail sale of a house, you have to get it out. You're going to put a time frame on this, and it has to be done by, that you will get it, the township will get it done, not you. Township will get it done in a certain period of time, or else it's waived if you're going to pass this.
So in the ordinance, it says that the appointment should be requested within 30 days of the settlement date. So this gives the applicant who's having the inspection completed their own plenty of time to make the repairs. Now, mind you, the repairs that we are asking for are within the property maintenance code, and they're not repairs that it's going to cost you an exorbitant amount of money to have things fixed. I'm more than willing to, I mean, I guess, with the board's praise, to share this with you, and you can see what things we're asking for. I mean, we're basically asking for just basically general life safety things.
It's not that, it's the time frame. Sometimes, like, I don't use realtors, I've sold houses strictly physical, but, you know, sometimes people need to get in within a certain amount of time. You know, they bring their own inspector in, they're doing this. If I have to wait for 45 days, this messes up the sale because, you know, guy wants to be in by the end of the month, it could be a quick sale, and I have to wait another, you know, contact you, and it's like 2 weeks after he wants that 30-day period extended there. I'm just looking for background.
Just to reassure you, this is the third township I've worked for, and we don't waste people's time. We do things rather quickly. We're very efficient. I mean, especially with planning. Anyone who submits a plan to this township, generally within 60 to 90 days to get done. Building permits, if you submit a building permit, very fast. I mean, we don't take the time limits that the state gives us, whereas townships, there's townships out there that they'll wait till that 30 days up and they'll call you and say, hey, we're missing something. So there's no fear of us holding a settlement up because we didn't get out and do an inspection. I mean, generally, the day of when we go out and do the final inspection, there's no issues. You'll have your certificate right then and there. It'll be issued on site.
And you all just discuss and maybe decide to move forward or not move forward with it? I've seen that done before.
Well, I have actually a question for you. I'm concerned about the fact that you'll give them 30 days, but they have to request the inspection. But some of the things on here may be financially onerous or time-wise onerous on the existing owner before they make the transfer. And I guess I'm kind of in the same mindset that, you know, buyers can go into a property that's distressed because they want to refurbish it and change it completely. So requiring an existing owner to make changes to fit screens and that sort of thing could be an undue a burden on them, knowing that ultimately it's going to be tearing apart. You know, if the person wants to come and renovate it significantly. So I'm not sure whether the recommendation, and maybe council will be able to give you some more about how to make this somewhat consistent to achieve what you're trying to achieve from that perspective, but consider the cost impact of the things that you're requiring exist in these residences before they're transferred.
Bill,
was.
Bill, are you possible, is it possible to integrate this with the UNO permit?
That's basically what this is.
Okay, so that's on the person that's moving in.
No.
It's on the seller.
It's on the seller.
See, that's.
Now, getting back to Stonebeck's, if I'm taking this right, maybe an issue where it's a teardown. Is that?
Or rehab.
Well, you
Or
don't
a
know
complete
necessarily.
rehab. There are certainly circumstances and provisions in the property maintenance code, which is what we're basing this ordinance out of, where we could give a temporary certificate of occupancy where the buyer signs off that it's going to be a rehab, and we give them a certain amount of time to bring the repairs up. There are circumstances that we can allow for that. I think there are townships that actually will do that if it's because, for instance, bank-owned properties, banks don't make repairs. That is basically on the buyer. So we have provisions in the property maintenance code, and we can add those provisions to this ordinance for protection purposes, which I don't object to at all.
And then that brings me to another question, leading off of what Robin's this is stuff that's referring to, is what if the property owners do not have the finances to make the necessary repairs? Then what does the township do?
Getting back to that, that would be a provision we could add as well. In past townships that I've been employed with that have these situations, a lot of times if that's the situation, the sellers aren't making repairs to begin with, and the buyer has taken the onus to make even repairs that come out on the inspection report. So we would allow that in that circumstance as well, I'm sure, that we could say that the buyer's taking this property as is, especially in an as-is situation. The buyer's taking the property as is, you have X amount of days, as we would do with a bank-owned property. I mean, we could make that provision.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And just out of curiosity, Mr. Webb, how many other townships would you say, maybe give us some local examples of neighboring townships that might be enforcing this?
Sure. Westchester Borough does have a rental license and rental inspections.
But not purchases.
Not on purchases. With regards to out in the western part of the county, a lot of those municipalities do. I live in Euclid Township. I had a UNO done on my home when I bought it. I believe West Wayland does. I'm not 100% positive. As you go out towards Delco, some of those municipalities that are out that way do it as well. I could provide the board a list of all the townships in Chester County that do that for the March meeting. Obviously, I won't be here, but I can provide it in a minute.
So I think maybe we could go back to the drawing board on this, let Mr. Sanders take a look at it. We've had some suggestions here that sound reasonable. Maybe we could, redo this and then put it out to the public and let them have their say, and we could take a vote on that. We haven't talked much about the rental inspections, which I'm a little bit more enthusiastic about that, because I know that there's always the chance of, we don't want flop houses, we don't want, and, that's a different kind of situation than putting some type of, constraints on homeowners who are under a lot of pressure that's pointed out, But let's do that for now. Let's table this and go forward on that. Are there any other questions about these proposed ordinances that we're going to continue to work on?
I'm sorry. Just another point. When we had met with Mr. Sanders, he had said that, or maybe it was Mr. Kilkenny, in previous townships that they worked for, that they drafted these ordinances, they'd let the local board of realtors take a look at it as well to give insight, which certainly would not have any objection to either, because if anyone's going to object to it, it's certainly going to be the realtors.
I do recall that. That's a good idea. So that's another thing we could come back and revisit this later. Any other questions regarding the proposed ordinances? Oh, okay. I have to apologize to our township engineer, Mr. Rick Craig. I went out of order. He's up. Sorry.
I had nothing to see with Mr. Chairman.
There we go. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of the Board of Supervisors minute meeting of January 16th.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Allen. All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Now we have the approval of Treasurer's Report dated January 31st, 2018 for the General Fund, the Sewer Revenue Fund, the Waste and Recycling Fund, and the Capital Reserve Fund, and the bills to be paid from these funds. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Mr. Purnell. Thank you, Mr. Meekin, with your second. All those in favor? Aye. Number 13, very patiently. Ms. Ashley Gagny, and presentation on sustainability.
Patiently waiting for this title to arrive. Hi, everybody. My name is Ashley Gagne, and I'm a member of the West Goshen Sustainability Task Force here in West Goshen. Thank you to the board for allowing us to present tonight. We really appreciate it. I'm trying to move this down. There we go. We have a presentation. We have slides that we sent in. No?
Yeah.
5-minute recess.
That's fine. Yeah.
Technical issues. Okay. Folks, 5-minute recess. Next item on our agenda, as previously mentioned, we have Ms. Ashley Gagny for a presentation on sustainability. Ashley.
Thank you. I hope everyone had a nice recess there. Thanks for getting these slides. So like I said, my name is Ashley Gagne. I'm a member of the West Goshen Sustainability Task Force. We formed earlier last year, actually. So we meet about every month, more often if we can make the time to do it. But it consists of myself and Miss Susan Charks and Miss Eunice Alexander. And tonight we just had a couple topics that we wanted to present to the board and to the public about some initiatives that we had in mind for this year, some long-term, some short-term, and the discussion of perhaps eventually forming an official environmental advisory committee or a sustainability committee for the township if that's something that people were interested in. So I'm going to kick this off by introducing Susan, and you can come up and tell them more about who we are.
Thanks, Ashley. I'm going to very briefly talk about who we are and why we're here. West Goshen Sustainability Task Force. Who's doing the slides? Next one. Yeah, so who are we? And Ashley mentioned that we're the people who are in the West Goshen Task Force are volunteers. We're West Goshen residents committed to making our township a sustainable place to live, to work, raise families, go to school, have fun, run a business, whatever, all aspects of life in West Goshen Township. And we are, to make it clear, we're volunteers. We're people who came together because we want to offer our expertise and our experience and our enthusiasm to the Board of Supervisors and staff and residents so that we can educate everybody about sustainability and what actions we can take in our township. So I also want to mention who I am. I'm Susan Charks, as mentioned, as Ashley. I've been a West Goshen resident for 6 years. I work at Brandywine Conservancy in the land stewardship team. And I have many years of working professionally and as a volunteer in educating township and local officials and residents on environmental issues and sustainability issues. And including, I guess I started when I was in high school and my fellow students and I made a successful presentation to the Waterbury Board of Commissioners on establishing curbside recycling. So that was how long ago that was, because there wasn't curbside recycling until we stood in front of the commissioners and made the presentation. And after that time, I've also had experience. I was a member and then chair of the Plumstead Township Bucks County Environmental Advisory Council, or EAC. And as Ashley mentioned, we were going to talk a little bit about EACs in our presentation. But just to be clear, right now we're a volunteer group of residents. In addition, I also worked at a watershed association in New Jersey where I was a municipal assistance program coordinator. So I worked with New Jersey township officials and residents on protecting natural resources, and gained some perspective from working in another state. Both states, Pennsylvania and New Jersey, think they're unique, and in some ways they are. If we can have the next slide. Thank you. So what is sustainability? This is sustainability, just so we all know what we're talking about with the West Goshen Sustainability Task Force. This is the sort of the standard definition, the ability to meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. I think we can make that even shorter, and we could say, what is sustainability? It's protecting the future by taking action today. So what kind of action would we want to be taking? Okay, the next slide. This is a more complicated view of sustainability, but it gives you a sense of, for one thing, that sustainability is in all aspects of our lives, and environmental sustainability is the one that we hear a lot about, protecting natural resources. But it is also important to think about sustainability in terms of creating a vibrant community. That's our social sustainability, and economic sustainability, making sure that all of us can be productive members of society now and in the future. And the next slide. So what does that mean, bringing it down to our local level? What is, that was the big picture. What does it mean for West Goshen Township? It means protecting air, water, soil, plants, and wildlife, promoting renewable energy so that we can reduce the effect of greenhouse gases on the climate. It means providing long-term economic opportunities for our community, supporting the health of individuals and our quality of life for our neighborhoods, for our children, and for visitors and anyone else who benefits from West Goshen. And it is nurturing community, and the relationships among people are the most important way that we can promote sustainability in our township. And what will the task force do? So this task force, this is our mission that we've thought about. What can we offer to our township elected officials, staff, and residents? We can research best practices and innovative solutions to challenges that face us. We can be a trusted expert resource for our elected officials and staff, because we have the time and inclination and connections to get that information. We can educate residents and businesses. We can partner with other municipalities and organizations who are facing the same challenges, and we can initiate cooperative arrangements with those other municipalities and organizations. And we can identify funding sources that can for making these projects happen, and we can engage everybody in making West Goshen sustainable. Another technical.
Yeah.
Actually, we could go back to the previous slide. When we were coming up with our mission, you. He's on it. We modeled our mission and our goals to some extent on the structure for the Environmental Advisory Councils, EACs, which is, as you may know, probably know, Environmental Advisory Council is authorized by the municipality's planning code. It is not mandated, of course, but any municipality can appoint a citizen board to address, to basically do these kinds of things that we volunteers have volunteered to do. It's something that the board may want to consider, and we're happy to help you in any way we can if you're interested in that. It just so happens that the annual EAC Network Conference is being held this year in the Desmond Hotel in Malvern, and I have flyers for the programs if you're interested. Municipal officials are all welcome to attend that EAC conference, and you can learn about what they do. EACs or other appointed boards, sustainability boards, are not uncommon. And our neighbors in East Bradford and East Goshen both have appointed environmental advisory boards. In any event, our group is ready, willing, and able to do this for the township, and happy to present tonight two illustrations of what we can do to suggested solutions to sustainability challenges. And I believe Ashley's next. Ashley's next, and she's going to talk about trees.
Thanks, Susan. You can advance to the next slide. So I'm not going to lie to you, this presentation that I'm about to show you was taken from the Arbor Day Foundation, arborday.org, I believe. You can find it. Like Susan mentioned, a lot of our neighboring townships and communities have environmental advisory councils or some kind of board that handles these issues, that really advocates for environmental sustainability. Westchester Borough does it. You know, Diane Herron was the chair of that board until she recently won for mayor. As a group, we've really been working closely with a lot of these boards from the surrounding communities. We've been representing West Goshen on at all of these meetings, and we've kind of gained some momentum just with our small group as it is, and a lot of interest in what we might contribute as a whole to Chester County. So the thing that I wanted to talk about tonight is something that I consider to be a short-term achievable goal for West Goshen, and it's something called Tree City USA. Tree City USA is a recognition, it's a national recognition by the Arbor Day Foundation. There's more than 3,400 communities nationally that have received the Tree City USA recognition. Westchester Borough has been Tree City USA for 26 years. You apply for renewal every year, and it's pretty simple. So this is the presentation that they actually provide to citizens or whoever might be wanting to apply for Tree City, so you can advance. So they basically, talking about the value of trees. I mean, it's true. There's so many times that I've heard people say who are shopping for houses that they want a place with old trees. And no matter how many new developments you put up, when they plant those small little trees, it's not really kind of the same. Trees have a lot of value. They provide shade. They make things look prettier. They're just good all around. You can advance. This is just, an example of the benefits of trees over 40 years, the costs that, can be saved by townships just by planting and maintaining trees over the years. You can advance again. So the Tree City USA program actually requires that each township or community have a community forestry program, which doesn't exactly sound as complicated as it seems. The one thing that it can provide to any community is organization. It's keeping all of our ducks in a row as far as tree removal, tree maintenance, how much we're spending on trees. So it kind of just gives us this broad thing to work with. You can. One of the great things about Tree City is when you're driving into a town, it's really nice to see that a town is committed to being Tree City and has achieved that recognition. I know that when I drive into Westchester, it's nice to see. East Goshen's the same thing. I think that it's totally achievable in West Goshen. So, you know, I run into a lot of people as a mom. I run into a lot of people at the parks, and people are always looking for opportunities to get their children or their families involved in taking care of the environment, or, you know, educating their kids in some way. And I think that Tree City and planting trees and kind of having a program would bring a lot of citizen pride, and it's something that we could do, I mean, starting this year. So the main Tree City USA standards, there's 4 standards that we would need to achieve. The first one is obviously establishing some kind of tree board or department. You know, I've talked to people at Tree City USA, and they can meet semi-annually. I mean, they don't have to meet every month. It doesn't have to be, you know, something that takes up a lot of time. You can meet once a year, and people would serve on the tree board. We just need to have one. Tree care ordinance, it doesn't need to be a long ordinance. It can be a few lines of how we're going to take care of the trees. And number 3 is where I think a lot of communities get held up, because it requires that we have a program with an annual budget of at least $2 per capita. So based on the last census in West Goshen, I think it was about 21,000. I'm not sure what the total population is right now. Okay, so that brings us to about, I don't know, almost 50, let's say $50,000. And that's not additional funds, and that's where this kind of comes into play. We're already spending that as a township, whether, you know, it's obvious or not, on maintenance in parks, which all count as the $2 per capita. So actually we've already achieved it. And not only that, even if we were to come under, you can still contact them and they work with you and they kind of give you some lenience. So they're really, really open about there's never been a community that's been denied a Tree City USA application, ever. And the 4th one is an Arbor Day observance, which is, I think, another easy thing to achieve, and something that our group certainly is excited about being involved in organizing. So you can advance to the next slide. This just kind of shows it can be a professional arborist or, you know, a tree board. It can be a group of volunteer citizens, whoever, you know, we or the board or whoever decides to appoint, that becomes legally responsible for the management of the trees. That could be people in parks. It could be, you know, someone from the board. It could be a couple citizens, whoever we decide to just put together. The ordinance is just guidance for planting. You know, if we want to only plant native trees, and I want to emphasize that this only pertains to public property. This does not pertain to private housing. What you do on your property is your decision. But this would be in public places in West Goshen. And it would provide an opportunity to come up with some policies and guidelines for builders or whoever in public areas too. So these are just some examples of where the funds might come from. But I've actually already visited the West Goshen Transparency list of funding. I forget the actual name of it, but I went through like the capital reserve and the major reserve, and it's the budget. Yeah, exactly. So I spoke with Doreen McClune in Parks, and so she was super helpful. She told me that we actually do a lot of our tree maintenance and all that stuff through Advanced Horticultural Solutions. And so I spoke with them, I spoke with the people there, and I looked at how much we spent last year just with Advanced Horticulture Solutions. It was something like $44,000. So, I mean, that's already most of the budget for the $2 per capita right there. You can advance. And that's what this, I know it's a lot of tiny words, I hate doing this in slides. You know, so we have some insect control, that's almost $5,000. The Advanced Horticultural Solutions is where we spent a good, I think, chunk of that money that we could claim to get the $2 per capita. And so it's pretty easy. The only thing that we would have to do, essentially, is apply. We'd have to have someone from the board or the township manager sign off saying, you know, we recognize this, we want to do it. They review all of, you know, we enter it in online, it's an online form, super easy. And then we have an Arbor Day proclamation this year, which would be in April, which is not a lot of time, but it doesn't have to be a big deal this year. It could be a totally, you know, small thing, but I've already spoken to the editor at the Daily Local who's willing to cover that as well and get that out there. So he's on board. And so we can apply. So we celebrate Arbor Day in April. We apply, and then we receive our recognition. And next year we'll actually have the plaque. We'll actually have the flag that, you know, we can display at the township building or wherever, you know, you choose to display it. And we have 2 road signs. And so it's important to note that every year we would renew, and there are no fees to renew. There's absolutely no cost to the taxpayers. We're already spending the money. It's already going to this Advanced Horticultural Solutions. It's just a matter of applying, getting it out there, getting it in the paper, and getting people involved. I think it's just a positive thing. So that's Tree City USA. That's one of the things that this group has really been working on. And I think that's the end of my, no, that's just, okay, you can actually advance to the next slide. This is just a quick example of what Radnor did last year. So, you know, Radnor has been celebrating for a while. They've been 25 years last year. And they do some pretty cool stuff. They just do an annual tree planting. Then, you know, they get local nurseries to donate trees. It's covered in their local newspaper. People get excited about it. They have speakers, and it becomes just a community thing. So it would be something positive. So thank you. And I'll introduce Eunice now.
You're fine, you could stay. Well, so I'm Eunice Alexander, and we'll lower this a little bit. Early on, I guess I worked at Gannett Fleming and Weston Solutions. I've done a number of things at the County Health Department. I'm older, so I've done a number of things. More recently, I was releasing design data at Sikorsky Helicopters, and I've worked for East Whitelands Public Works Department. So, and done some volunteer work, a lot of volunteer things with watershed groups and the like. With that, I'm going to pass around a slide on the back, because the original formatting didn't come across, as you'll see, and a map on the other side that I'll be speaking to. The Sustainability Task Force encourages West Goshen Township to join other municipalities in paving the way to our region's clean energy future. Thank you for the opportunity, each of you, to discuss and offer a resolution toward this end. An ever-growing number of local governments and businesses are preparing for a healthier, sustainable Chester County for all who live, work, and play here, and for those to come. Near-term changes will impact the electricity in our homes and businesses, their heating and cooling, and all modes of transportation. If done well, we may achieve startling socioeconomic and environmental benefits. The transition to energy usage is occurring for two reasons. First, science has decisively concluded that human-caused carbon dioxide, CO2, and other greenhouse gas pollutants, GHG, are causing rapid, extreme climate change, increased storm intensity, drought, infectious disease, etc. An example is the cascading effects of Syria's 4-year drought that began in 2006. Second, low-cost renewable energy technologies and battery storage systems are becoming the economical, healthy, and reliable choice, especially for electricity. Next slide. Though you may know a lot about climate change, we all have questions. To mention one, last year my sister commented to me, "The sky is so big. How could we possibly change the climate?" Next slide. Well, let's look at our atmosphere's thickness for a moment. In 1780, the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere was 280 parts per million. Next slide, please. By 1880, with the Industrial Revolution well underway, that number had risen by 10. By 1910, 300 parts per million was reached, the first time in 1 million years. In 1988, when my daughter was born, atmospheric CO2 crossed the 350 part per million mark, but the climate remained stable. Governments around the world were still able to assume the harvest times and other general patterns that allow people's ways of life. CO2 is now an approximate 408 parts per million, and we are entering a time of growing instability. One minor example, our area now receives double the heavy downpours it did in the 1950s. Next slide, please. Solar heat trapped by GHG has made Earth habitable. However, the panel on the right side shows how our extra GHG has been retaining more heat than can escape in space. That's that skinny line versus the one on the left. Also, the imbalance is warming some places like Alaska more quickly than our region, but nowhere as much as the oceans. And 40% of the pollution stored by the oceans is making them more acidic, damaging shellfish, right? Which require alkalinity. And though other GHGs degrade within decades, the remaining bulk of the CO2 pollution stays in the atmosphere for hundreds of years. Next slide, please. I am passing around what many gardeners already know, that the 1990 map of growing zones was abandoned for a new one in 2012. But continued changes in average temperature and precipitation made the new map obsolete by 2015. Now, birders and foresters tracking Maple Beach forests could share similar maps. We're not done yet. Truly, we must cease GHG emissions as soon as possible. Next slide, please. Fortunately, solar systems, wind turbines, and batteries are rapidly stepping up to be the cheapest form of electrical power. Next slide. So this is the one that's coming around, I'm sorry about that, but 2016's highest amount of solar photovoltaic capacity, 300 gigawatts, shown here, is a blip on the world's still accelerating exponential curve. Solar use has doubled every 2 years since 2001, Meanwhile, its cost has dropped 1/5 a year for the past 40 years. Next slide. In 2015, the unsubsidized, levelized costs of wind and solar electricity were cheaper than coal and nuclear, and on par with natural gas. The plummeting cost of battery storage is allowing consideration of batteries to fill the niche. Is it niche or niche? Niche. Show of hands. Okay, so the battery storage may fill the niche currently held by gas-fired plants. That is to say, generate power during peak demand. Next slide. Thank you. I'm sorry, next slide. To illustrate how fast transitions can occur once a tipping point is reached, imagine you're watching the New York City Easter Parade. It is the year 1900, and you enthusiastically spot the lone car. Now, it's down there on the left side, about halfway down. Okay, just trust me. Next slide. Now picture yourself, 13 years later, hard-pressed to find the lone horse. We are reaching a tipping point now with the convergence of several technologies. China has just announced that it will manufacture 7 million cars within 7 years. The unsubsidized purchase price of an EV is becoming comparable to an internal combustion engine. Electric cars, trucks, buses, and trains have significant life cycle advantages. For example, electric cars are 5 times more efficient. They have 20 versus 2,000 part motors. They're cheaper to maintain, and they can last 2 to 3 times as long. Next slide. So, because of both the dire scientific warning about not changing and the gains of changing, as in less asthma, states, counties, and municipalities across America are switching to clean, renewable energy. Next slide. They include Atlanta, New York, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, St. Louis, Downingtown, Phoenixville, and Westchester, and 391 mayors. Next slide. States deploying for this transition include Maryland, Oregon, New Jersey, Connecticut, Delaware, California, Hawaii, New York, and others. But the growing investment and reliance on renewables of corporations like ExxonMobil, Amazon, Bank of America, Estee Lauder, Kellogg, Crayola, Mars, Unilever, and Walmart are a signal that this transition is a key to remaining competitive in the 21st century. Next slide. West Goshen Township should consider, first, the impacts of increased flooding and more frequent heat waves already here, and its ability to make certain land, water, and infrastructure improvements for readiness and resilience. Second, planning that will be needed for the renewable energy coming online and implications for development. And third, opportunities that will arise for local jobs, infrastructure, power purchase agreements, and enhanced attractiveness of the township for residents and work. For these reasons, we urge the board to consider and commit to clean energy no later than the following resolution's proposed schedule, with adoption of a resolution in upcoming board meetings, not asking for any decisions immediately. Whereas continued emissions, and I think you each received one of these resolutions early, if you can find them. Continued emissions of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases are causing overall warming of the planet and extremely rapid land and oceanic changes that threaten human civilization. More frequent extreme weather tests infrastructure, military capability, and emergency services, impacts access to food, water, and energy supplies, and disrupts commerce and social services. We've all seen this. The 197 countries that have committed to the 2015 Paris Agreement within the UN's framework on climate change agree that it is imperative to limit the overall warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius and to become carbon neutral within this century. Whereas the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has affirmed the duty of Pennsylvania's municipalities to protect the environment, that is air, water, and other natural resources, for the benefit of its residents as an obligation under Article 1, Section 27 of the Pennsylvania Constitution. Environment, open space, and a healthy lifestyle are the top 2 priorities of Chester County residents based on last summer's public survey for our county's comprehensive plan update, Landscapes 3. West Goshen Township is committed to being a community characterized by health, safety, conservation, livability, prosperity, and equity. The use of renewables in place of energy derived from fossil fuels reduces GHG. Renewable energy initiatives are providing health benefits and cost savings for residents and businesses, governments, and institutions while stimulating local economies and job growth. Be it resolved that West Goshen Township will join other towns and cities, regionally and nationally, in a community-wide transition to 100% clean renewable energy by 2035 and to 100% renewable energy for heat and transportation by 2050. The Board of Supervisors will appoint a committee to recommend actions to be taken by the township to facilitate this transition to renewable energy. Clean renewable energy will be defined as carbon-free energy generated sustainably from renewable sources such as wind, solar, small hydro, tidal, fuel cell, and geothermal energy. Locally produced and distributed energy will be prioritized where feasible for any direct advantages to the township. All township stakeholders will have the opportunity and will be encouraged to participate in the planning and implementation. The Board of Supervisors hereby calls on the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to adopt codes and standards to increase the efficiency of buildings and appliances, to set a goal to use 100% clean renewable energy, as I've mentioned, for the township, and to strengthen the alternative energy portfolio standard to levels that will allow it to meet 100% renewable energy goal. We commend the boroughs of Downingtown, Phoenixville, and Westchester, and the mayors of the boroughs of Acklen and Kennett Square for their foresight in the transition to renewable energy proposed by West Goshen Sustainability Task Force, February 20th, 2018. And we would be happy to address questions at your convenience and provide you with any additional information going forward. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Chris. Does anyone have any questions in the audience?
Hi, Margie Swart. Thank you, ladies, for your time and volunteering. In light of their presentation, I'm wondering if the pool car that is in the budget for 2018 might be a Ford Flex or a economically friendly vehicle. Might just be one small step to show that the township vehicles going forward would be energy efficient. So just an idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Margie. Any other questions from the audience?
There's a lot.
Tom Casey, West Goshen. How can
how can the public get more information regarding what you're doing? Is there a website, Facebook pages? And also, didn't the township originally, weren't we supposed to have solar panels installed at the new structure? Wasn't that supposed to be done? I recall something about it, but.
I don't know.
That wasn't enough surface area to make it efficient.
All right, so if you could just.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Tom, thank you for your presentation. That was great. And yes, so we have a website. We're a new group. Basically, the way we're getting the word out is by coming to meetings and talking with citizens and talking to people. We have a Facebook page, and I actually run the West Goshen Township Facebook page, so I'm going to start linking those two together so that we can get the word out more. But I think one of the reasons that we would be interested in doing, for example, an event like Tree City, like an Arbor Day event, would be exactly to do that, to get it out in the paper, to reach people, because I think you're right. I think people will be really interested. So our website is like westscotiansustainability.org or something. It's not up and running yet. Like I said, we're a young group, but we're getting there.
And we welcome anyone who would like to join. I mean, this is just the people who have started this group, but we really envision it as being, open to anybody who's interested. So we are going to be working on our social media. We have an email, wgsdf@gmail.com also.
Has anybody from your organization reached out? I think you just are part of Parks and Recreation. Have you presented this to them? Okay.
Yes, I'm on newly appointed on Parks and Rec, and the only thing I've done is been a bus captain for the Phillies March.
Thank you for that. That sounds like
that was actually a major.
Well, we thank you for that. I know there's been an expressed interest. Mr. Purnell of the Historical Society has actually expressed some interest about Tree City.
They've already started working.
Very good. I think that's a great start, at the very least. Dr. White.
Sustainability is a good idea. It's also falls under the idea of historical, because historical is preservation. And we're not only talking about structure, we're talking about land and trees, also a planning commission. So please come to the planning commission meetings. Those land developments are all about possible preservation. And also, remember my dad, Doc White, worked tirelessly to make sure that the land developments had wooden buffers, especially at Wrangley Court and at the Drakian Park. So the township has done a very good job where they can to save trees. Also, you come down Woodview Lane, and it looks like the trees where the houses were shoehorned between the trees. So the street does not look developed at all. Unfortunately, with some of the other ways they do things, they just clear the whole area, we'll put the trees back, but it's not the same. So if there's a way we can legally make the developers do wooded properties with the existing trees, that'd be great, with what we can.
Can I ask you a question, about the Historical Society's work to date on Tree USA, and maybe recommend that we put them in touch with?
The Historical Commission, specifically when the Boyd House on Phoenix Pike was destroyed and the whole area, the 5+ acres, were clear cut. A immediately said that was wrong and that we need an ordinance to protect the trees and keep things like that from happening. And recognize just what they talked about, that we need the trees, there's no question. And we have several witness trees in the township. They need, that we're in the process of documenting those. Witness trees are things that were living when the revolution happened. So the two are really tied together. The revolution and history are tied to our trees. They're there.
So, Mr. Purnell, so the Historical Commission hasn't started the process of applying the township for Tree City USA, is that correct?
No, I took the information, I just got the information recently, and then that'll be at our next meeting.
Can I propose to the board that we pursue Tree City USA and have West Goshen qualify for Tree City USA within the next 6 to 8 weeks? Is that possible in order to have the Arbor Day celebration?
We need a motion for that, I suppose.
Yes.
Would you like to make that motion?
I would.
I'd like to second it with a, I don't know if it's considered an amendment, but I do think it would be wonderful for this to be a collaboration between what the Historical Commission's doing and the Sustainability Committee as a way of engaging a broader set of our residents to be integrated into this process, specifically those that care about the history of this township as well as the beautification of the township.
And I especially like Mr. Purnell's idea of documenting the witness trees and having them mapped on the West Goshen website.
We're working on
That is an excellent
I
idea.
think it would be an outstanding recognition of the township to have those type of trees be the first trees that we set out to preserve. Great opportunity.
That would add on to that, probably to the Parks and Recreation, if we could get them in on that, because obviously.
Well, that's a part of it, is Ken Lear, who's our Parks and Rec director, is a liaison to the Historical Commission.
Great.
So we think that's part of it.
Sure. Okay, wonderful. So I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Any comment before we vote on this?
I will raise at the Park and Rec, which meets tomorrow night.
Thank you very
Mhm.
much. And I'll be seeing Nancy Fine, so I'll mention them.
It's Thursday.
Thursday.
Park and Rec is Thursday.
It's Wednesday. It's tomorrow night. It's tomorrow.
Yes, Mr. Casey.
I'm curious, trying to understand the Tree City distinction, the connection with the historical, and what it is you guys just motioned. Fortunately, tonight I have pipeline concerns on the brain, but I'm trying to determine, first of all, when we become a Tree City USA, we can only do that, develop that on public lands. So we can't force like citizens and to do that kind of stuff. So if we have to meet a certain criteria for this, and we're protecting the trees that are historical in nature, what happens, or maybe this is a question that the new solicitor can look into. Welcome to the township, by the way. And what's going to happen, though, to this distinction, or how is this going to be impacted if a pipeline decides it's in my way? Because the Commonwealth Court today just ruled basically it doesn't matter what you guys decide. So
to directly answer your question there, really we can't do anything. PUC controls that. And that goes back to the discussion that we've had over the last 3 or 4 months, in that the law controls controlling the PUC and the Department of Environmental Resources. The amended to put those things, those abilities to control those things in the law that controls those. So it has to come on a state level. It can't be.
I'm just worried, like, how is that going to impact the distinction and the work that's being done? And, you know, like,
So Casey, Ms. Ashley Gagne already outlined the qualifications that we needed to obtain in order to become Tree City USA. I believe there was 4 or 5 of those, and none of them had to do with plotting the witness trees that Mr. Purnell was talking about. However, since the Historical Commission is already interested, it might be nice to combine efforts for volunteer effort in order to make a heavy load later. So all we did was suggest that we work together, but to pursue the Tree City USA application.
Yeah, the vote is to pursue the application for
Tree City USA.
Just to be clear.
and is there any, I know that vote's open, but I think it would be a good idea for the board to consider the environmental commission at the township level as well. Something that I know we have talked about, an environmental safety type of committee, but what they just outlined is pretty much what I had been thinking along the way, and I think that the board should consider doing such a commission that could work in conjunction with the historical as well.
Thank you.
Good evening again. I'm just having a hard time wrapping my head around the Tree City USA happening within the next 6 to 8 weeks versus in the next 6 to 8 weeks, 444 acres of drought property trees are going to be wiped out.
It's, if I may,
Sure.
it's private versus public land. The City USA has to do with public land and not private land. We cannot dictate, or should we, how individuals choose to develop their property.
I'm not
As long
asking-
as it's done within the confines of the code.
Right, I'm not agreeing one way or the other, I'm just making a comment that, you know, how many of those acres, 166 acres, will be township property? So is there something we can do before the developers come in and the 166 acres that are going to be transferred to the township, can we go in now and identify the trees or keep the developers from taking down those trees that will eventually be transferred to the township?
I
So,
don't believe
I
they're
think
going
Mr.
to be.
Craig.
That open space is going to be preserved as woodland. They're not going to take any trees down. It's all going to be preserved.
okay, thank you.
It's open space.
Appreciate it, respectful tone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Margie. Any other comments, or are we ready to vote on this measure? Going once, going twice, that's good for me. Let's have a vote on that. We've got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Presentation. Okay, now we have a presentation on potential development of the Agway site at Route 202 and Matlack Street by Western Development Company. Thank you for your patience. Absolutely.
Good evening, John Jarris, I'm local land use counsel to Western Development Company. With me this evening are John Western and John Tolman from the Development Company. We began discussions with the township last year about a proposed text amendment to the existing township ordinance to permit an apartment use on the existing 4-acre Agway property located at 956 South Matlack Street. At that time, we explained we were trying to rezone the property for lifestyle apartments. The subject property is currently zoned I-2 light industrial, permitting a number of uses, including but not limited to research or test labs, production, processing, distribution facilities, many warehouses, offices, and hotels and motels. We began discussions with township staff in May of last year, and then we came before the then existing Board of Supervisors in June of last year and presented a detailed PowerPoint presentation, the beginning of which you see on the board here this evening. We were then requested to prepare a traffic impact study, which we returned in August of last year and presented those findings to the then existing board. We're here this evening to seek some direction from this existing board with respect to this proposal, and I know Mr. Westrom wanted to address the board this evening on that particular issue. So, John.
Thank you, John. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry it's getting late. Wanted to welcome new supervisors to the township, and we know each other. David, good to see you. I'm going to try to make this brief, but we are seeking direction. We've been here for about a year, and so I'm going to whip through this fairly quickly on some of the things. The most important part is going to be traffic, but I wanted to explain to you, especially for the new supervisors who have not seen what's going on, what we are proposing. So this is the plan for this evening. The objective is to provide the highest and best use for this property and discuss future steps if there is the desire for the municipality to move forward or not. We are doing this in many other municipalities. So wanted to say that, as Mr. Jarrah said, we've been here for about a year, and we really need some direction. We need to know whether or not this is something that you guys want to do or not, because we have a landowner who's been there, and the property's going to be redeveloped. It's not going to stay in Agway forever. So if this is the right use, which we think it is, we'd like your support. If you think it's the wrong use, we'd like you to tell us that, and we'll go elsewhere. As we said, as Mr. Jarrah said, we made our first presentation last year in June. We then made a traffic presentation in August. We submitted a text amendment to change the zoning, or not change the zoning, but permit the zoning to have our proposed use in that particular zoning district. And then there was an election, and everybody kind of stopped. So now we're making our next presentation, and that's in February. So that's where we are. A little bit about us very quickly. 30 years in business. We've done tons of things all over the place. All of this, especially in this township, but we've been 30 years in business and done multiple things. Our focus was on single-family homes. We've done those. We've done active adult communities. One in this municipality, we preserve open space. We did that in this municipality. We do urban development, redevelopment, suburban and multifamily rentals, as well as independent assisted living facilities, which we also did in this municipality. And we have a grand opening ribbon cutting tomorrow, which you're all invited to. I will rephrase that a couple times during this presentation. Just to point out, these are all the communities that we've done, from the Jersey Shore through Bucks, Montgomery, Chester, Delaware, and other Philadelphia, predominantly in the city, as well as various counties in New Jersey. Most important to you are the ones that are in this municipality, and as you may or may not know, we kind of have focused over in the Ward Avenue corridor by the airport, where we built 133 55-plus luxury townhomes between 2007 and 2000, and finished it up in like 2014 through a massive recession. We had a bank that wanted to take it away from us, but we persevered and made it be what it is today, much to the compliments of your municipality, who helped us through times that we needed to change different designs and worked with us. The most important one, or the most recent one, is this over here, which is our Arbor Square community. This was completed in December 2017. Again, grand opening, or not opening, but ribbon cutting tomorrow, which the municipality is invited to. I will tell you that particular site already, well, number one, it's a $35 million investment into the municipality. It has will increase the tax rateables by about 10 to 12 times what the property was before. And at this point, even though we completed in December of 2017, we already have 40 new residents and we have 40 deposits. So we expect by probably the end of March, early April, that we will probably have the property will be over half full with predominantly residents from this particular area. being in this municipality. So it's flying. People love it, and I think you'll really enjoy it when you see it. I welcome you because I want to show you what we actually do as a company and how we do things. So we know that this property and this location is a great place to live, work, play, and shop, and that's because you have a great township here. Now let's talk about the individual property. The individual property is 956 South Matlack. It's an aging Agway store. As we said, the property is going to be developed in some way. It will not stay an Agway store. The seller has wanted to leave, and he wants to move on in his life. So it's a highly desirable location for millennials and others that may want to live in this particular region. And it's a redevelopment. We're not cutting down farm fields. We're not cutting down trees. We're taking an existing property, reutilizing it into a new use. So what are currently permitted on that use? There's laboratories, warehouses, wholesale storage, contractors' yards, offices, automobile repairs, body shops, motels, hotels, and mineral extractions. All those are permitted uses. They need nothing from the municipality to allow that particular use to be made. We would like to bring what we have is our Luxor luxury apartment brand. It's currently developed in the Norristown area. These are actual photos. Again, I invited you to the event tomorrow. I would also invite anyone on the board or staff to come and visit this. You can see it living, working, and operating. When we first proposed this in last February, we just finished it. It now is 90% occupied. We have great demographics. It's providing a high impact to the ratables for the town of Norristown, and it's been highly successful. What is it about? It is a targeted environment where it's amenities galore. People today in a luxury lifestyle apartment want a ton of amenities, from workout areas to minimal and modern spaces, to really cool hallways, to common areas, to areas where people can work and play and everything else. In the back area, we have additional lounging. We have an infinity pool that when you stand on it right here, you can actually see the Comcast centers and the high buildings right down the Schuylkill River. Again, this particular property was adaptive reuse of the property, and it's very symbolic of what we would propose on the Agway site. Interior courtyard, which people are, we have videos, so I was looking at what's going on at the site. People are actually there watching, inside tonight, watching all the Olympics around the BYOB bar. They're watching things there, but this happens to have fire pits. It has areas where you can dine, bocce and putting greens, just lounging area, and a great place to be able to grill. People are out grilling every single night. All those things were there. Also, one of the things that we would have on the proposed Agway site, which we have on the Luxor in Norristown, is under building parking. So that there is surface parking, but there's also a significant amount of under building parking. And those people who have come and seen our site say we have the nicest parking garages I've ever seen, because it looks like a residential facility. So it's pretty sharp, storage, etc. But that also reduces the amount of impervious that's would be proposed in the Agway site, because we're parking 2/3 of the cars, proposing to park 2/3 of the cars underneath the building. What makes our design so cool is that it is basically designed around a center hub. If you've ever been to a boutique hotel and you walk into a lobby, there's usually some really cool amenities, and we've designed that. So the first and foremost is our chief lifestyle director. We have a person who basically coordinates events constantly. I used this analogy before, but if you think about the Love Boat, the Julie McCoy, this person actually, and her name's not Julie, it's Carrie, but Carrie basically coordinates everything with the residents to try to make sure that they have events that go on. We do 2 to 3 events a week, whether they're on-site or off-site. We do all those things, and she listens and does surveys, everything else to make sure that we do the things that the people want in our community want. Relaxing Wi-Fi hotspots, people are hanging around just sitting there doing their work or studying, whatever they might be doing. Media and entertainment is everywhere. We have tons of televisions and screens and things like that, communicating in all aspects. Fitness room, which is used daily by everybody. a model area, which is a common area. We've actually had cooking classes in there. We've had different showers, from bridal showers for people that might be getting married, etc. We have a yoga studio used constantly. The BYOB bar is the hangout area where people hang out in the middle. It's constantly being used. As I said, people are there tonight watching the players. Game center. There's also people playing pool tonight. They're playing pool, they're playing shuffleboard, they're playing foosball, because it's a great spot to hang out. We offer complimentary coffee and snacks to our residents on a daily basis. And the other part is then, what we've done is our designs are very, they're smaller units, because we're trying to have people be out in the open space that we have. Modern kitchens, comfy dining areas, lounging areas, abundance of natural light, both from inside and outside. The property, as you'll see, is kind of a square donut, so people can look on the outside or you can look into the courtyard. We have no balconies, because we don't want people to be outside smoking and throwing their cigarettes out there. We don't want them. We've had other instances in places that we've built in the past where people are putting kind of junk out on their balcony, which just doesn't really look good, so we eliminated that. And the other part is, from a building technique, they don't leak. When you don't have balconies, we always have a problem. No matter how we do it, we've tried 50 different ways. There's still some type of leaking that comes into some balconies. So large closets, really cool, efficient bathrooms, and a flex space in this particular unit. Almost everything is one bedroom, which you'll see, and a washer and dryer in all our units. What we want to make sure you realize is that this is not a sprawling garden-style apartment community. This is a new design, new technique. It's not just in this part of the country, but all around the country right now, and it's something pretty special. But what does it do for West Goshen? It basically is a $30 million investment. Okay, it provides a lifestyle that meets the needs of a growing demographic. It generates $1.4 million of fees up front to West Goshen Township. If this property is not built, that won't come. It generates about 8 times the annual real estate tax revenue compared to its current use, and that's another $110,000 in annual tax revenue for West Goshen on its EIT, as well as $220,000 of tax revenue for the school district. And the most important part is, by permitting us to do this, we're proposing to create great traffic improvements along 202 and Matlack, which we all know is a very difficult intersection in this municipality. So, to talk a little bit about who our target market is, we deal with stinkies, and people who are single person, household of any age, high income, low credit, and indecisive home buyers. I have statistics on what we've done at our current site, but I can tell you that we've hit the target market predominantly in there. We do have ages between 21 and 65, but the predominant age group is bell-curved in the 27 to 35-year-old, and average age is 32 years old in our existing community. So, quickly on the millennials, they're the biggest group in the world right now. Okay, ages 23 to 38 have surpassed the baby boomers. The baby boomers are kind of fading away, and the millennials are coming up. But they're very educated. They want high amenities. They want a lot of things that we all spoiled them with, and we're giving it to them in the rental communities. Just showing a little demographics of how things are moving. Everything in this particular area, in a 3-mile radius, is all moving up, from population to the number of people in the age group, to the marital status, to what people are making, and how many people are renter-occupied units. A lot of times we get municipalities, when we present this, they go, oh my God, you're going to create school children for the community. There's a study this was done by the Montgomery County Planning Commission, that showed what the data would be that you'd really add about, on a multifamily new project, you'd add 6 new school-age children per 100 apartment units that were created. We can show you what we did at Luxor. We have 4. Okay, we have 4 out of 145 residents. We have 4 school-age children. So it's very minimal, because our designs are the way they are. So this tells you what the designs are. Smaller units equal smaller household. This is not this is not student housing. This is not housing for families. We have an abundance of studios, 21%. We have 1 bedrooms would be 68%, and there's only 11% are 2 bedrooms. And we do have in our Luxor, we do have a few young millennials that have roommates. They each have a bedroom and a bathroom, and it's pretty cool. And we invite you to go see it. And the other part about it is that our rent range, we try to keep our rents between $1,300 and $2,000 a month. So it's not high-end housing, but it's very luxurious. How does it help the township? Well, again, from the taxing authority, currently West Goshen Township is receiving from the Agway site $1,300 a year in annual tax rateables, and the school district is getting $13,600. Under what we propose would be this $35 million investment, that there would be $11,800 to the township and $118,000 to the school district. And that's just on an annual basis of just real estate tax. From a standpoint of upfront, there would be $1.4 million of upfront fees paid to the municipality on this property for reuse of an existing property. On an ongoing basis also is that there's additional revenue, and especially from the earned income tax. So from the real estate tax and the earned income tax, when it's all, you have everything go through, you actually have revenue for the municipality at $106,000 a year annually, and revenue for the school district at $216,000 annually versus currently the $1,300 versus and $13,000. So huge number, big differences. How does the site lay out? So this is, I say that this is a bad picture, but we wanted to superimpose the proposed building over top of it so you can see what's underneath it. This is the existing Agway site, and our building fits perfectly right over top of it. We do encroach into some of this area in the green area over here, but you'll see where we've made it up or in the middle, other parts of things that are done. So it's just kind of showing you that it's a perfect fit for this particular site. And now you can kind of see how it lays out, is that it would have off of Matlack a single entrance loaded into our front door area, which is very important, has surface parking, but predominantly most of the parking is all underneath the building. So people come through here, and they go underneath, it goes underneath the building. I don't remember exactly what the number of parking spots are on the outside and inside, but we're about a 1.4 parking spaces per unit, which is adequate because most of the occupants in this particular building are single persons, so they only have one car. One person, one car. So it's talking about the main entrance, the self-contained courtyard, modern amenities, the surface parking that we would have under building parking, so 1.3, it's like 1.35. There's your under building access, and we have a big infinity pool that faces south because we want that. We also have a dog run for everybody, because we have a dog run on our other site, and people are using it constantly. If you want to look at something, you can look at Facebook. There's a lot of great posts there under Luxor Luxury Apartments. I was watching one the other night, where somebody posted their dog running back and forth like 25 times in the dog park and thanked us for having it. The most important part that I think you care about is how would this site improve the treacherous situation that goes on to a Matlack. So we did a traffic study, and we made a presentation, which I was very confused about, okay, because traffic studies are just confusing. So the traffic consultants provided the formalized traffic study, and I went back and beat them up and said, we need to make that into like 4th grade level because I don't understand what you're talking about. How can we make this so that we can explain to the municipality that what we're proposing will really help? So this is the crux of the presentation, is that we know that any current use would add more traffic than what we were proposing, okay? Because I shouldn't say any use. There's many uses permitted in this district that would add traffic more than what we were proposing. And they would not have to do any physical road improvements to address anything for traffic flow. What we would do is we would develop our Luxor product, and simultaneously we would improve the traffic conditions, and they're pretty big. I'm going to show you what they are. We use TPD, which is a very well-known group, and they submitted things to your township engineer, Mr. Craig, and I don't know, what communication has happened since then, but I can show you what kind of our 4th grade level results are, which is what I really wanted to explain without having all this gibberish about left turns, right turns, etc. So here are the 3 issues. Number 1 is you've got traffic congestion at the intersection of 202 and Matlack. We know that, okay? You have insufficient car stacking for left turns onto 202 from South Matlack because there's not enough room for the cars to stack, which doesn't allow people to drive by. And the other part is that you've got traffic just backs up there. So what would we do? And I have individual slides for these. Number one is we replace the existing traffic signals on MATLAB with new phased left turn signals on to 202 from both directions. Even though we can't do any improvements on the opposite side of MATLAB, we can change the heads of the lights, which I'll show you. Number two is we can widen South Matlack on the east side to create a greater capacity for turning lanes, which gives better traffic flow. And lastly, we can add left turn lanes onto Willowbrook and a center turn lane into our proposed community, which will allow for a much freer flow. And all these improvements, no cost to West Goshen Township. Okay, we do them, we improve the traffic, it makes it better. So what's number one? And this is here's your area, and one of the things that I talked to the traffic engineers is here's Google Earth, and look at all the people that are backed up on this side, okay, on the other side, and there's nobody backed up on here. However, we have to take into consideration that in the future there may be more traffic that comes down that way, so we want to be proactive and help the municipality in doing something proactively versus just reacting to what it would be. So right now, for whatever reason, and again, I don't know why, there is this type of light on Matlack going across, okay? We're going to do that. All it is we're going to replace a 3-head with a 5-head. It sounds easy, but there's technology that has to go through and timing and yada, 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 but we would replace that to allow independent left turn lanes from both directions. So this one from this side and from our side on the Matlack. Secondly is the stacking. So currently there is a left turn lane on this lane, but it only is 13 cars. We would increase it to 19 cars. Today, it doesn't need 19 cars, but we're incorporating our traffic as well as additional traffic that may occur through all sorts of population increases, changes. People may want to come this way now because it would be easier to get through here. So what we've done is we've actually created 46% more cars in that left turn lane than what currently exists right now. We're proposing to do that. And then the last part is that we would add a 4-car stacking lane out where our side would be onto Willowbrook. Not that there's a lot of cars that get stuck here, but we want to be able to have free flow coming through from South Matlack towards 202. So this is your before, and this would be what you'd have after. There's no left turning lane there right now. So the end result is you've got a better traffic light here. You've got lots of stacking that allows to go on. We have new traffic areas that will allow for people to go on Willowbrook, as well as allowing traffic to go in and out of our site unencumbered. What does that do? Well, this is the drum roll here. The drum roll is that right now, on average, at that intersection, at AM peak times, people are waiting almost 3 minutes to get through that intersection. Okay, 151 seconds. With our improvements, the average time would reduce to 110 seconds, which still is a lot, but it's 41.3 seconds less of everybody's day, okay, and it's 27% increase. Now, in the afternoon, it's a little bit better. They only have to wait a little bit less than 2 minutes, but we're going to try to make it less than 1.5 minutes, okay, so that's a 27.1 second reduction. When you look at it, that's pretty big, okay? It's a 27% decrease in time that people would spend there, and it's a 23% reduction in the PM peak hours. All that, again, at no cost to the township, would be done by our company in the process. So about $775,000 worth of expense that we would end up paying for. It would decrease everything by 23 to 27%. It would increase the traffic flow. The left turn signals alone is very important for safety because people are jumping out there trying to jump through on when they can. Improved traffic flow reduces pollution because people aren't just sitting there as long, and it has a notable increase in efficiency at that particular intersection all around. So, in conclusion, is the benefit summary just tells you, all the things that we're proposing to do, and we really need direction. If it's something that the municipality would like, we've submitted, as we said, we submitted an ordinance, a proposed text amendment. We realized that there was political issues that were going on between, let's say, September and now. That's been changed, that's all resolved, and everybody is who they are. And we would like to get direction, whether we move forward with this project or not. I will tell you that our company alone has invested over $100 million in West Goshen Township over the last 10 years between The arbors at West Goshen and Arbor Square at Westchester that we built all on Ward Avenue, all of which had added zero impact to the schools. They all have their own services that really have not added a lot of impact to the municipality in any real way. We can show that this is pretty much the same. It might be a different demographic. It's not senior, but it's a different demographic, but we do all the work. So that's my presentation. Questions?
I do have a question.
Sure.
Given the age range, is it feasible for the residents to be able to walk to the borough? Did the traffic impact study consider the ability to cross over 202 or make it safe to cross over to either walking or with a bike?
You know, I don't have that answer for you. Okay.
Would that be something that you would look into, and would
Sure.
it be possible, given that it's a state law?
I don't know what's there. We were focusing so much on the lights itself. I don't know if it has a pedestrian access point.
It doesn't have anything at this moment, but given the age range, I mean, you're basically landlocked, and if you want to go anywhere, you will have to get into your car. And you got Levante Brewery, that's like maybe a mile away.
$4 Uber ride.
What's that?
$4 Uber ride.
Well,
I'm
just saying, there's.
I agree with you, and I think that there are lots of locations to add for bike aspect. We were trying, there's limited ground. We actually have met with the adjoining property owner to allow us to take a little bit of the space from their property. I don't think there's any more room. I just don't know if there's any more room to be able, I don't have a true answer for you. We can look at it, but I don't have an answer for you.
That's a fair answer. Thank you.
Quick question about the traffic study. With the changes and the improvements, I mean, it might sound like a dumb question, but I just want to make sure. Does that take into account the increased traffic from the residents that are going to be there, or you're just taking a snapshot of what the traffic is currently, and if you put these improvements in, this would be the results?
So that's a really good question, okay? Because the traffic study that was submitted to Mr. Craig has all sorts of gyrations about what might occur, whether or not other things get developed in Westchester or don't get developed, etc. I told our traffic engineer, you're complicating things too much. Break it down. So the answer is today, what is it today, plus our residents. So it includes our residents plus today, how would we impact the site? Because we don't know I don't know what's going to be developed, and none of us have a crystal ball, but they take into consideration like population trends and blah, 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 blah. I said, tell us what today, because we all know what today is. And let's make it like how long don't tell me how many cars go through it, tell me how much time people wait, because that's really what people I think care about.
Okay, so my understanding is you did include the population
Yep.
and today's factors.
Yes.
Came up with that. Okay, great, thank you.
Question. Would you consider, in light of the last presentation, making this an environmentally friendly building? Would you put solar panels in, or would you consider, collecting rainwater to use on your landscaping? There's any number of things that you could do to make it much more sustainable.
We have looked at a lot of different aspects of it. It's not big enough to really have solar panel. There's not we can't generate enough, we don't believe.
There's only sky up there.
I know, but
no trees or no.
There's investment, there's money that can be paid for certain things, and there's money and we looked at the money that we felt we could use to try to deal with traffic. I will tell you that our buildings are incredibly energy efficient. They're built to the highest standards with all the newest technologies. We're going to an international building code that's going to be adopted, I believe, in September in Pennsylvania, which is going to elevate so many more things. From a sustainability standpoint, we have new stormwater management, which this property doesn't have at all currently. So we'll be dealing with all those particular aspects. It will be more energy efficient and more environmentally friendly than what's there today. It may not be to the level of what you're.
There were 400 people there today, but I'm always not using a lot of energy, I'm sure, in comparison to
we do what we can. I can't guarantee we do solar and some of the other aspects, but we will again look into that.
That would make it very attractive.
Sure.
And for the renters too. And this demographic certainly is committed to saving our.
I would expect that both these residents that would be moving into here, as well as you should really talk to our residents at both Arbors at West Goshen and Arbor Square, that they would probably be very intrigued to assist you in some of your recommendations that you have to be involved. Sorry.
This traffic study, you said there's 189 apartments, 1.4 parking space per car. I'm going to rough that out to make it 250, make it real easy. So we're talking about potential 250 cars. On the Matlack Street side, the one lane that you're going to put in or make longer, you said it would increase from 13 cars to 19 cars, which is 6 cars.
On the left turn stacking. On the left turn stacking.
Just on the left turn stacking, but it's still, it's only 6 cars for potential, not that all 250 are going to be coming out, but if we took 40% of that, that is not a whole lot of, have you guys talked to people down in Junta Lane, Anthony Lane, and all along there?
I mean, I
just don't see that. I don't see
what's
this
the amount of cars
extending it for
that
6
goes through there?
cars.
That goes through that. What's the amount of cars that go through there? It's like 9,000 cars go through there.
8,000 per peak hour.
Yeah, there's like 8,000 cars per peak hour that go through there right now.
Okay, but I'm saying an increase of 6 cars is not a. It's like more cars.
It's six spaces that will be moved through. In peak hour, there's 60 minutes. I mean,
Potential maybe 100 out of 250 cars.
I don't argue math.
I'm just, you know, you paid for that traffic study, so obviously it's going to lean towards what you want. I just don't see where the improvements and the extending are going to be able to take care of that much potential traffic. Again, I rounded up to 250. I'm using your
Well, but not all 250 are going out at the same time.
I understand.
I can tell you, and I'm happy to show you the pictures of what we have in our current facility. I mean, the target market group, believe it or not, I mean, half of them work at home and half of them work at jobs, and they work at different various hours. I mean, there's still cars in our parking lot, you know, all the time.
As I said, I took 40%. It still isn't.
And how many units are in this?
189.
This is 189.
So folks, we're having problems hearing you, so I know it's getting late, but the next people that speak, perhaps, but you're close enough, I can hear you.
This is just for the board. It's really, I appreciate your presentation. I just want to remind everybody that we're going through a pretty rigorous, comprehensive planning process that really takes into account what the residents want to see happen in West Goshen. We have a survey out right now that's asking those questions. I think a lot of, we've been attending those meetings. I think a lot of what we're anticipating is that people already have a huge issue with the amount of traffic. And I understand that you're doing these traffic studies and that you're saying that it's going to improve. I want to believe the best always. But if this guy is selling Highway and it's going up for sale anyway, I kind of, if I had my 2 cents, I would just say we don't need to buy into the first thing that comes along. There might be other uses for it.
Actually, over the past 2 years, we've met with probably, 12 different developers?
We have a developer that would be interested in putting a huge office building there.
He wants an office building.
Generate a ton more traffic.
I've got to be honest, it's kind of getting late, I'm getting punchy. My biggest concern with this site is a hotel. Hilton Garden, you go in there with 200 rooms, no traffic improvements, and it produces twice as much traffic as this place would. Not that I'm saying approve this, but in contrast, that's allowed by right now.
Right, I understand that there are other options. I'm just saying,
That are by right now, that are much more impact than we have today.
The other thing, we wouldn't get the off-site improvement side.
Not at all. Just what's directly in front of the parcel, that's the only thing we can require.
Mr. Purnell.
I was going to point out to the lady that asked about the environmental thing. improvement in the traffic, flow environmentally is, in my opinion, much more important. Getting that wait time down with the engines idling, getting that wait time down would be much more desirable than the little bit of electricity you'd get off the roof. And I'm not knocking one, but I'm looking at one versus the other. I think the engine
Yeah, there's a lot of
idling
pollution
is
created at that
the
intersection.
difference. yeah.
Yes, please, if you could, thank you.
Just real quick, because I know it's getting very late. I guess this is a two-part question. I was wondering whether any developer that did come before you, I don't know, mentioned any possibilities for affordable housing or non-luxury apartments?
This is the only residential property.
The only
that's
resident.
come. The rest were corporate parks.
Corporate parks and hotel.
And hotel, absolutely.
Right, okay,
And
then, right.
just the housing that they're offering, those rates are cheaper than some of the other rental apartments in the area.
Especially in the borough.
So, yeah, especially with you,
Well,
you're talking to go to, because I will, to move on to, into the new apartments on, Market, going in,
Or Gay Street.
or Gay Street going in, it's like $2,200 a month.
Yeah, right, so.
The one coming out is right around the same. So-
Right, so now we see the dilemma, right? Because we have a situation where not only can children like my children, who are millennials, they can't afford to go into luxury. They would really like to have places to live that maybe don't have all these great things, but are really good, nice places. And then we have people across the street. We have St. Paul's Baptist Church. I don't know if you know those folks, but they could walk over to church. They do a lot of work for the MLK Day, you know, and I know them through my work at the Melton Center. So there's a tremendous need for affordable housing, and I mean affordable housing. And of course, they have to stretch to meet it. But somehow, some way, if we could move beyond the idea of luxury as being a great thing and think in terms of real needs of people and the impact of the increased greenhouse gases typically going up with greater amenities, then we all know it's true. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
I like the products. I like the way the arbors turn out. And it's a beautiful building. I just think the location is just terrible. We know there was a death at that intersection just months ago. Soon after that, I believe within just the last couple of weeks, there was a bad rollover accident, truck, fuel, something turned over. Yeah, but it's just a horrible location. And I'm confused by the process in this township. Why do developers seem to come to the board first? And maybe I have it wrong, but what's the planning commission? Shouldn't developers be going to the planning commission or the zoning board first to get them to change the zoning?
Developers come in to meet with Rick Craig, Bill Webb, myself, Derek, especially if they bring a product in that it's not zoned for it. We meet with them for a few minutes and say, it's not zoned for it.
And that's, why didn't you say that to this?
I did, and he can then ask to come before the board.
Okay. So
We've had the most transparent discussion about this for a year.
Yeah, nothing, there's no decision making. This is what's known as an initial presentation.
Exactly.
I don't even know if it qualifies as a sketch.
It does. We don't have a sketch plan in ours.
It's not even a sketch plan. So the planning commission by law doesn't get to look at this until a preliminary land development plan is filed formally with the township. This is an initial presentation, Mr. Westrom is merely asking the board, are you interested? And I think I heard him say, if you're not, we'll go elsewhere.
Is the board, I mean, you want an answer tonight, right?
I'd like
some
direction.
direction.
I'd like direction.
See, and that's just, see, I feel like then the board gives approval, and then it's presented, not approval, but if they do, not just in your case, but in any case, then it's presented to the planning commission that, well, the board has already given their support of our.
No, this is a concept only. There are so many details that still have to be fleshed out. I mean, we're talking, and they've been raised tonight, traffic, stormwater management, with density, impervious coverage, green space, all kinds of issues that they have to comply with the township's ordinances. This will be reviewed in excruciating detail by the planning commission and this board and the township's professionals. So the engineer is going to get a shot at this and is going to take the subdivision and land development ordinance and the zoning ordinance and hit every possible section with which Mr. Western will have to comply. This is just saying we like the idea. If you can submit a plan that gets past all of that other judgment criteria, then we'll be in a position to approve it. That's months, maybe a year down the line.
Another thing, the traffic improvements, to make those improvements, that was in the $750,000 or $800,000 range. I'm curious as to why we continue to carry such a large balance in our general fund when we, if that's such a troubled intersection, why can't we go ahead and pay for those improvements and do that on our own?
We love it. Sorry.
Yeah. And then not approve a zoning change for them to do. I mean, then we get the improvements, we get the increased safety.
Could I just interject, because I've handled a lot of these applications. Sure. One of the benefits this type of proposal offers, ma'am, is the developer does it at his dollar. If the township chose to make these improvements, they'd have to offer it to public bid and pay those dollars increased. So the township gets to save on this type.
It's cheaper to do it this way.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, I understand that, but I'm thinking not even to have that development there. I mean, obviously there's 10 other uses at the Agway. Why, like Ashley said, why go through all these comprehensive plans when if something isn't zoned, that a developer or a township official can write their own ordinance and bring it and say, hey, we'd like to change your ordinance, and here it is, we already did the work for you. Approve it. I don't know, I'm confused with the process.
Mr. Webb, could you tell us what the I-2 could, this parcel could be developed for?
Yeah, the I-2 zoning district would allow for office buildings, it would allow for laboratories, hotels, motels. Thanks, John. Mass transit stations, offices, wholesale sales, storage, and distribution, which we've already said someone would love to put a junkyard there. Any production, processing, cleaning, testing, repair, storage, distribution of materials, goods, foodstuffs, and products not involving retail activity on a lot, including a junkyard. Research, engineering, and test laboratory. Contractors' establishments. Public place of amusement, recreation, athletic hub, mass transit station, commercial greenhouse, financial establishments, agricultural uses, automobile repair and body shops, hotel, motel, forestry, mineral extraction, microbrewery, and pub, which mind, I'm having a meeting tomorrow for one to go on Haggerty Boulevard. Rental business, accessory uses clearly incidental to the principal buildings. The following are allowed by special exception through the zoning hearing board. Radio and television transmitters, child daycare centers, retail sales as accessory uses, and churches. By conditional use, public utility facilities and gas and liquid pipeline facilities.
So if someone wanted to buy the land and put a hotel in, then they would be allowed to do that, and there's absolutely nothing.
It would be by right. They would just have to come through with the land development plan.
They have to meet our area and bulk requirements, stormwater, all the required stuff, and no road crews.
Pretty much, they would be in and out of here in 90 days with a shovel on the ground on the 91st.
I mean, I do this a lot, and what I say to people is that we have to realize is that the property is going to be redeveloped into something. What it's going to be, and I understand comprehensive plans and everything else, but timing is also very important for people. So whether it's us, we've already invested $100,000+ in reviews and traffic studies and engineering and everything else that we've done. The seller, you know, he has the right to sell his property. He wants to move on in his life. So this is one option. And what we did is we proposed a text amendment that permitted, you know, this by a certain, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, was it conditional use or was it?
Actually, it was permitted.
Permitted,
By right.
by right. So,
Want me to comment?
I'll get it.
Okay. I'm Maxine Richter, and I live at the Arbors, which was developed by...
And a big supporter, I believe. I hope so.
Don't count your blessings. I have lived in 2 countries, 7 states, and 11 cities. And I will say that this is the one and only builder that I would ever say that I have never said this before, but he is a good builder. His thinking is in the future. And I am on the Comprehensive Plan Committee, and one of the recommendations that I've been making on the questionnaire is that the township really needs to have a very good mix of younger people, older people, and in between. His development will comply with that. If you don't have that, you don't have a growing city or township, you have a stagnant place. And I have lived in a stagnant place, and it is not pleasant, and I got out of there in less than a year, and I had bought a house. But it was awful. I won't go into that, but anyway, I think this is perfect for the township. The location is great, not bad, you know, as it has a lot of good potential, the location does, for improvement. When you face the alternatives, the walkway that goes in there, or whatever, will increase traffic more than the millennial type people who are living there. Millennials really don't get in the car and drive too far or too much. They stay with their computers. There's no communication. And that's why the design has the common rooms to try to force interactions for millennials. So I would, at this point, he's not asking for approval of the entire project, just the go-ahead and the improvements that he's made to traffic management here at the Arbors and so on. His traffic management study has proved to be right on. So I would recommend, or I am in favor of saying, yes, go ahead with it.
Thank you.
Okay.
And just as a comment real quickly in terms of addressing something was that, thank you, is that neither the Arbors or the Arbor Square community would be there today because they were not zoned what we ultimately got them zoned. So we had to do the same thing. And what I try to do is I try to come before the municipality with the concept and say, do you like it? And if you do, let's figure out a way to get there. And that's what we're doing tonight. This is an informal presentation to get a straw poll, see if, you know, how you feel about it.
Yes, Dr. White.
Hi, Doug Webb, West Goshen. We all love the Agway. We're sorry to see it has to go. Who knows, maybe another garden center can come near and buy it. Possibly, if John builds this, maybe he could do it a bit smaller with some open space there, preserving a little bit of what, when we look at Agway, we look at, oh, it's a garden center. We see gardening types of things. If that could be sort of incorporated into this, maybe, just a thought. Thanks.
Thank you.
One more thing that's going to actually take care of maybe an hour next month. Mr. Westrom, Arbor Square, and Maxine, maybe you can help with this. Are your fire hydrants in the arbors public or private? Does the HOA pay for them, or do they tell you? Yes.
Yeah,
The HOA.
let me just.
Sure.
Very respectful.
Sure.
Public comment on this kind of thing, it would be appropriate to address the board, not put Mr. Western.
Okay, yeah, this is just, I've asked them, like, yeah, it was supposed to be on the agenda tonight, and I've asked this topic to be on the agenda. And this would answer my questions. This would handle a whole lot.
If you could address the board, and if the board would like to put the question.
Sure. As you know, I've brought before you, for 7 or 8 years, the links, the township paid for our 2 fire hydrants. And as of June of 2017, our homeowners association started to get bills from Aqua. And we were told that it was because it was a private street. So I know the Arbors is a private street homeowners association. So I'm curious to know if the Arbors
I don't think that's pertinent to this conversation.
well, it's not, but
It's not.
Hold on for a second, Yeah, let me ask you.
Sure.
There's been a presentation.
Sure.
Lengthy presentation, detailed one. Board is trying to take public comment and offer you the privilege of doing that.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ron, thank you.
And I'm not sure who to address this to, but I'm guessing Mr. Craig can help me here. My concern was initially that it's now zoned as I2, and we would be allowing for residential use in I2. So my question is, because I've always thought that we should be considering the impacts of these decisions in terms of having a spot zoning change to look at it holistically, what the impact would be to the other areas of the township that are zoned I2. They would also become residential, approved for certain residential, which say it's R3, would they be approved for?
No, R3 is single family.
The edge is also like to.
The edge is on too, that's
that
true.
as well.
The edge is the student housing up on Rosedale.
So is, I think Madison
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
Across
So
the
there's
county.
already an ordinance the ordinance has already been changed to allow for residential in one.
They've commented and done text amendments with the board of supervisors approving those amendments.
You'll have to say that again, I don't understand.
They do a text amendment. The attorney was prepared, John could probably.
Well, actually, I was going to address it. We have prepared a text amendment, and the one we've offered to the township has certain conditions related to it. It's a very fair question. How does this impact the rest of the I2 district? And the condition that we imposed as part of this text amendment is that lifestyle apartments shall be located no further than 750 feet from a major collector road in the township. So it's a condition that we've imposed on ourselves that you thereby limit this type of development that can happen in other I2 zone properties. That's a very fair question.
We want to make sure, we do this a lot, so we want to make sure that it's not something that allows to be township-wide, okay? So it's kind of a specific, it's not spot zoning, but it allows for other properties, but there are certain requirements which probably limits it to 2 or 3 other properties in the municipality. Based upon the text amendment that's presented to you, if you agree to go forward, you might like that, you might dislike it, you might want to change it to be less, more, whatever, I don't know, but that's how you can do that by law.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the audience? So, Mr. Westrom, what sort of safeguards have you put in place, if any, I don't know if it's even legally possible, to mitigate students from renting there?
That's a very good question also. Number one is we would be further away from the university than the current properties are that are there.
You can't rent to students at all. anymore, except in the R4 district. That's it, the Cambridge Hall Apartments.
Okay, you know what? Mr. Lalonde answered the question for me. So,
Which we could even put a condition on the plan as well, no student housing, even though it's
But
not the R4.
my question was, what sort of safeguard?
yeah, I don't know how you do, I don't know exactly how, I mean, we try to do things based upon design and elements that way. I don't know how you, I mean, I don't know if you legally can say to somebody, is that discrimination? Is Fair Housing Act?
No, there is no discrimination against students. That's not one of the legally accepted.
They're not a protected.
I know that 55 plus, 55 plus, I can do that.
I mean, as part of the application process, they have to have some sort of wage or salary.
Correct.
And are you accepting applications that are co-signed by mom and dad?
Typically not, okay? Typically not, but I will tell you that we have people in our Luxor right now that really don't have a lot of income, but they have a lot of money, okay? So I can't,
Well, then,
I mean, that's,
so
that,
then you're asking for a different, additional proof as to bank account information.
Correct.
What's held in your bank
correct,
accounts.
yes.
Anything else? No? Okay. Well,
Well, what's Mr. Westman's question?
My question is, you know, is this something that, I'm sorry.
Mr. Purnell?
I like the
I think there's some definite good things out of this plan, but I have to confess I am conflicted. Because there's a lot of different factors that aren't discussed here today that have to do with the residents that were there. You know, if you knock on the doors of those residents that do live nearby, it's any decision you make, it's a difficult decision because they are relying on us. I understand the possibilities. I'm just not ready at this point personally to make a commitment at this point. And I would like to look into this a little further on my own. Having been through this 2 times, I still remain conflicted on it.
I like it.
We've done everything I think we can do. We made an application, or we've submitted a text amendment. So I really would, you know, we either have to act or, I mean, no action is action. And that means that we go bye-bye. I mean, so.
I understand that. And I'm not saying that you necessarily haven't done everything that you can do. I'm saying perhaps maybe I haven't done everything that I can do. And that's where I'm conflicted about. So I understand that.
So how do we
Well,
proceed?
you just want a clear indication if the board is currently interested in receiving more information from you, and it's clear that 3 of us are interested, so.
Sound like my girlfriend. She said, I'm interested in that meal. I like that.
Without
So,
having a vote of any kind.
so the question though is what, and I'll ask my attorney, what do we do? I mean, we've made a submission for a text amendment. Can we formally, we kind of formally submit it? What do we do?
What we're asking for tonight is a straw poll from you, the supervisors, that can we move forward with the text amendment application? And as we alluded to earlier, that's going to involve Mr. Sander taking a look at it. That's going to involve the rest of the staff taking a look at the text that we've submitted, possibly tweaking it. But Mr. Westrom, I think, needs an indication. Is it worth his time and effort to go forward in processing this application further if there's not at least a sentiment by the majority of the board that it's a concept worth pursuing? Fair statement, John?
Yes, sir.
And I understand Mr. Phillips' concern. And one of the things I wanted to respond to that is I know you've been holding out an invitation to the supervisors to come look at
go visit. Yeah.
the Luxor existing facility in Norristown. And if that's something, sir, you wanted to take advantage of, we welcome it.
Thank you.
I mean, I'd love to, we'll send a bus down, we've done that for other municipalities, send a bus down, you know, jump on, you know, I don't know how many people can get on based upon laws, whatever they are, but, you know, we did 2, whatever, love for you to see it, because I think that I can show you all the pretty pictures you want, touching it is different. In the same way as I'd like you to all see tomorrow, you know, or at some point, our Arbor Square community, because when you go there, you can see it and understand it. So we would like to proceed forward. I mean, and I guess it's a formal application, they have to accept it, correct?
The text amendment has been submitted. Again, we're not looking for an official vote this evening, but I know Mr. Westrum's looking for a consensus from the board. Is this something we can continue to pursue with a real interest on board?
I'd like to take a look at the text amendment. Let's go over it with Mr. Sanders. We have new council now. Let's look at what possibilities they are.
Well, that, I believe that's the start of the process.
Right, yeah. We could take, you could submit that. You said you've already submitted.
We have submitted it.
We could sit down and specifically have a meeting after the presentation, now that you guys have had the presentation. I could promise you that we can have some sort of turnaround response to you very quickly.
I love the word quickly, but I like the definitive on what quickly means.
Our next meeting is March 20th, so that's next time we meet the public.
That's fair enough. By our next
Is that
meeting,
fair?
we'll have
Okay.
an answer for you. Is that fair enough?
That's, yeah.
I'll take that as, I'll mark it as consensus of council.
Do we
Start reviewing the proposed text
Do
amendments?
we need to show up to talk to you about it, or do you want?
I will touch base with you with any questions we have about that. It's a big decision, and
Chairman, I could probably act as the liaison. If there's questions from the board, if there's questions from the federal, I can certainly coordinate with Mr. Jaros and have any back and forth that we need.
it'd be great.
Perfect.
So we'll give you a definitive time, the next meeting. You're going to have an answer one way or another. But in the meantime, we're going to look at this, and we'll look at the text amendment that you guys are going to submit. So we're going to be taking action on it. It's not just going to be sitting there. It is a relatively new board. This is only our second meeting, so I think that's pretty fair. What do you say?
I agree. I mean, do you need us to come back to present, or you're just going to tell us, or what's?
I was president of the presentation.
You were not.
I was.
Oh, you are?
Yes.
We were seated
Oh, I didn't-
seated in the audience. So, although I would be interested to see the details, something like the traffic impact study.
We have.
And if
I
I
would be
may,
interested in seeing the traffic impact study, so I will make an appointment with Rick Craig himself. And
Yeah, that's one of the things that I'd like to look at over the text. I thank you. I mean, yeah, you did your homework, and then some. And I appreciate that. I just feel like I still have to do mine. Yes, Dr. White.
John, is it okay for the board to say yes to the idea, but for you to be open to the plan itself? Can the plan be shared slightly?
100%. 100%.
Still shows you land development, so that would be the.
So we can work with you on what's actually going to be built there.
if I can make a suggestion, in past applications, when we submitted the text amendment, it's circulated by the township solicitor staff. It comes back to Mr. Sander, this is the changes we'd like to see to the proposed text amendment. Obviously, then that'll come back to me, I'll review it with Mr. Western, we'll see if we can agree, and then ultimately the township would have to have a public hearing on the text
I
amendment.
think the meeting of the 20th would be to, if those issues have been worked out, and if the board wants to move forward, to authorize advertisement of a public hearing.
That's what I was getting.
Authorize advertisement for a public hearing in April on the text amendment.
Does that also mean that the adjacent property owners will be notified of the zoning change?
Just the ones in West Goshen.
Over the adjacent property owners?
The adjacent property owner is, there's not many within the 1,000-foot requirement. We, legally, just so you're aware, we go one step above what we're required to do. We're only required to advertise it in the newspaper and post the property. West Goshen takes one step further. We notify people within 1,000 feet of the subject property. The people within 1,000 feet of the subject property are all industrial uses, so they will be notified.
Right, I would just think FedEx and some of those businesses over there might want to know what potential plans are.
And we've already done it, we've already met with them, so.
Okay, great.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
People come tomorrow, I know Mr. Canal's coming, so if you haven't seen our swear, I love it. It's nice over there. Thank you. You been through it yet?
Yeah, I went over about a month ago, and said if I had a couple of people
I understand. I would do the same. Thank you.
John, when is the ribbon cutting? Okay, folks, we're getting near the end. Okay, great. Mr. Bacon's asking me if we get paid time and after. We don't. Item number 18, possible, no, I'm sorry, I'm skipping. We've got number 15, discussion, possible adoption of ordinance number 2-2018, further amending the township's deferred retirement option plan for the township police officers. Okay.
Okay, and December 13, 2017, I'll make this as painless as possible. There are two tiny changes to the drop ordinance that were recommended after our last pension meeting. The ordinance called for and we're just complying with state law. There was a mistake in the ordinance, so we're just clarifying it. Pursuant to Act 44 of 2009, drop accounts can only have an interest rate set of 0 to 4.5%. For any accruals that's based on our pension performance. So that is clarified to make it pursuant to state law 0 to 4.5%. And also, the original ordinance adoption segregated the accounts of the retiring officers per discussion with our actuary, Dave Killick, and township staff. And we had 2 union representatives at the meeting. The funds are going to stay in the pension fund so as to not create any IRS issues. So those are the only two housekeeping issues. Yes, sir, Mr. Brunel.
Make a motion.
Oh, okay.
Second.
Jesus. You? Mary?
We have a question on the floor.
Could you just kindly clarify whether or not public hearings need to be transcribed?
Public hearings need to be transcribed?
Yeah.
Public hearings do not necessarily need to be transcribed, no. There are certain things that need to be transcribed. Zoning hearing, board hearings need to be by law transcribed. Conditional use hearings before the Board of Supervisors need to be transcribed. But for example, a zoning change, a zoning amendment that is being considered does not have to be. Certainly, if the board wants it to be, it can, or if the applicant wants it to be, it can. But there are some that do, and some that don't. And I don't believe that this is a public hearing. This is a standalone ordinance, correct?
Mr. Solicitor, how does that apply to this particular?
I have no idea, Mr. Burnell. I have absolutely no idea. I was just responding to the question.
That's a point of order. I would say that it doesn't apply.
I agree with you. This is not a public hearing.
Oh, okay, well, the legal notice in the Daily Local says that notice is given that the Board of Supervisors of West Goshen Township will conduct a public hearing.
Well, maybe
As
that
of
needs
the
to be
time.
fixed going forward.
Okay. All right. And then, so I went to the public library to get a copy of the proposed ordinance so I could read through it.
Public library?
The Chester County Library.
Law library.
Yes, correct. And would you just confirm whether or not a copy was sent to the Chester County Law Library?
It was.
Okay, they did not have it, so I'm looking at the one that was submitted by the previous solicitor on December 5th. So I just have a couple of questions about the ordinance itself. It says through the collective bargaining negotiations that the board or the township determined it is desirable and beneficial to include in the township police pension plan a deferred retirement option program. So I'm asking the board what they found desirable and beneficial to the township to include this drop program in the new contract.
Those were parts of negotiations.
I was going to say that was part of our negotiations with them. I don't know that that's public information.
So this ordinance, I believe, is effective January 1st. How many of our police officers will be eligible to enroll in the drop program?
5, and they have all elected.
They have all elected. Okay. And then within the next 5-year, the 5-year contract term, how many of them, how many more will be eligible?
2 or 3.
Ordinance number 5, 2011 amended the police pension plan to add $100 per month per year up to $500 per month per year. Is that still in effect? So even though we're giving them the drop program, they still get to get that additional benefit for working those additional years? Okay. And does the board know before they vote to approve this, the costs to the township? You're voting to approve
There's no change to the cost.
Yeah, there's no change to the cost. This is just a housekeeping amendment to comply with state law. There's no other effects or impacts of this. They're not board is not reconsidering the entire drop program or retooling it. It's two minor tweaks to the language of the ordinance to meet state law.
Okay. As a citizen who watches over how our tax dollars are spent, and I know that Captain Stone, I would be asking these questions, and I wish I had to ask them about non-uniformed, because it pains me to question these things, because you are quite deserving. But could someone on the board explain to me what the drop program is?
I think, Marge, in all fairness, since it's getting late, we did go through that when we were presenting it at the last meeting. So we would just be rehashing it over again.
Well,
but the idea is the general idea, the way I understand it, and why I voted for it, is because it'll enable those officers, the top tier, making a lot of money, a lot of tax-paying dollars for their salaries, giving them an opportunity to retire early in a beneficial way to them, and also to us, which gives us cost savings in a way, so that some of the younger officers move into their spots. Their salaries won't be as high, and it's sort of a win-win. That's the general idea about it.
Okay.
So it was something that was negotiated with Mr. Meekum and Mr. Purnell, and many other municipalities have entered into it. They've experienced cost savings because of it in the long run, and that's what seemed attractive to me when I voted for it. I don't have that in front of me right now since we already went over it, so I can't give you numbers if you're going to ask me about it.
And that's why I want to discuss it, because now I didn't have it in front of me in December, and I have it in front of me as of noon today when I went to the law library. And it's not...
Let me interrupt.
Sure.
Excuse me.
Certainly.
The board is being very kind in allowing public comment on individual items such as this. What I see happening here is a question and answer session. You're asking questions of the board. You just asked them, what is the drop program?
I know.
And you said you want to, quote, discuss this. This is not the time or the place. Public comment is for you to come up and say something declaratory, and for the board to say, thank you for your comment. It is not a discussion period, it's not a question and answer period, and it's 11:15 at night, and we've got a very minor technical amendment to an existing ordinance that was previously adopted, and I don't think this is appropriate.
Okay. Thank you. I would like to make...
But you'll ignore me and you'll go on, and it's up to the chair to...
You can make a declaration as to what you think and what you found, is what I think he's trying to say.
So my understanding through reading through this is completely different from yours. So whether you read the ordinance and voted to approve it, or you voted to approve something you were told, but the way I'm reading the ordinance is a high-level ranking police officer who would retire after 25 years or meeting 55 years of age elects to participate in the drop program. Thereby, he elects to work for 3 or 4 or 5 more years at his current salary while also receiving his retirement benefits that go into the pension plan. So they're not retiring early. What it does, it gives them the opportunity to work 3, 4, or 5 more years and double dip. This is costing us millions of dollars, and I don't think the board understands it. And that's all I'm bringing to your attention. Now is your chance to maybe just continue this to next month and understand, make sure you understand that you know what this drop program is. This isn't an opportunity for them to retire early. This isn't an opportunity for them to continue their career for 3, 4, or 5 more years and then get a lump sum payment of $150,000 to $250,000 after their 3 to 5 years. So I just respectfully ask that you know what you are voting on before you approve this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Margie, for your declaration. Any other questions? No? Okay. First, a motion to approve this ordinance.
I move to approve it.
I'll second it. All those in favor? Aye.
Yeah, so we'll redo it. Very good, thank you.
Okay. Moving right along, our next agenda item. I want to make sure I'm looking at the right agenda.
Yes. Number 16.
Okay, we have a discussion of the West Goshen Township and Westchester Borough Joint Vision Partnership Program.
Yes.
It's a grant to investigate traffic, pedestrian, and bicycle circulation improvements in Westchester Pike and the Paoli Pike corridor.
I've asked Nate Klein with Pony Associates to come today. Thank you for coming 3 hours ago.
My pleasure.
Oh, great.
I don't
throw right to Nate and just.
I don't need much time, and I talk fast.
First through.
I'm here on behalf of the Borough of Westchester, where I'm working currently as the borough engineer. Mike Crone, the borough manager, asked me to come, and Casey asked me to come tonight and just walk through this grant application. The grant is technically due tomorrow, but we need West Goshen's buy-in along with Westchester Borough. Thought process is really touching on things you guys have already talked about tonight. I think the chairman mentioned traffic and safety early on. I think somebody commented on pedestrian connections to the borough, how do we walk to the borough? And I think somebody else mentioned sustainability, how we work with other municipalities. So things you guys are already looking at, right? So kind of cool. I work in the borough. I live in East Goshen. I drive this stretch of road every day, multiple times. If my kids have basketball games, I'm driving it twice as much. So it's a stretch of road that's got some safety concerns. It's got 4 lanes cross sections. You know, cars are crashing in the Wawa. I mean, we've got all kinds of issues out there. The thought process is coming up with a collaborative, concept level plan that the borough and the township can agree upon, that we can then execute, design, get funding, get grants, and get something done. Get some bike lanes, you know, connect all those pedestrian areas that people are walking through dirt or walking out on the road, see if we can do some traffic calming road diets. I don't know what these answers are. I think there's answers out there. We've got a whole team ready to go to get this pulled together. Thought process again, let's leverage our tax dollars, both communities, get this fund from the VPP. If that doesn't work, we'll know in April. We can look at TCDI grants. We can look at second rounds of VPP grants. So I think it's a no-brainer. I think Casey thought it was pretty obvious, but he asked me to come anyways just to bring it up and let you guys know what's going on. That's my quick explanation.
If the borough gets the grant, we will be a kind of a co-signer, but we have our own VPP with CompTech, so they'll be the primary. We would still like to share some costs. We're looking at $7,500 maybe.
I think it was 12.5.
Okay, that was 12.5 because we're doing scope. Okay.
I move.
Can I move that?
Okay, so I got a motion, I have a second.
I'll defer to her to move, and I'll second.
Sounds good. All those in favor? Wait a minute, I have to ask for public comment. Any public comment?
Great.
All
You're
right.
great, very good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Thank you.
Easy enough. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I think you won the record for the fastest presentation.
That was fantastic.
You will go down in the annals of history, West Goshen.
I can do that anytime you need me, that quick.
We might make a plaque for you.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, next item. We have a discussion and possible appointment of 2 supervisors to the Woodlands at Greystone, the NIDMA, the Neighborhood Improvement District Management Association, for 5-year terms. So basically, that board has to, by ordinance, be formed. We do need 2 township members, board supervisors, to be placed on that for 5 years. Any volunteers?
And you can always vote to send designees, which means me, Derek, Rick. If you can't make the meeting, they're going to meet maybe once a year.
Okay. Robin Stuntebeck would like to be interested, so I nominate Robin.
Like to be interested.
Okay. Robin.
I would be
expressed-
interested in supporting or participating on that board.
Mr. Purnell?
Yes, you. Yes, yes.
Can I just say that the law only requires one from the township with at least one member representing the municipal corporation in which the NID is located? So I don't know where you're getting this section.
I was asked by the bond council and the developer to have 2 township representatives. So that's what we're doing. I think they can enlarge, they're going above and beyond what they're, so there's more township representation than just one. We'll have protection, we may have.
Okay, so you
swing votes.
Margie, to your point, that you might be correct in reading it there, but they're asking for more, so I guess there's no law against being more. There it is.
Yes.
Okay, so
Oh, okay.
we have 2 township supervisors who are willing to serve our township on the NID board. And that would be Mary Lasoda and Robin Stuntebeck. I make a motion to nominate them to the board. Do I have a second?
You?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda item, we have the possible approval of Resolution 4-2018, Finance Department Records Destruction.
Correct. Another housekeeping item. Everything from payables from 2010 to utility billing payment entry proofs from 2015. In compliance with the Pennsylvania Museum Historical Commission, down to a penny.
I'll make the motion.
Any public comment? All those in favor? Aye.
Ditto for Resolution 5, except this is Police Department. Okay. You?
A second.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay.
Good, thank you.
And now, finally, any other business to come before the board? Margie Swartz.
Thank you. Would you kindly put the Links Homeowners Association on the agenda for next month regarding fire hydrants? That was a request by the treasurer of our homeowners association. I'll give you a quick rundown just so you're prepared and the solicitor could be prepared. As I stated earlier, our homeowners association for 7 years had not been receiving fire hydrant bills. June of this year, we started receiving bills from Aqua. They are at an industrial rate instead of at a residential rate. And I was told by Mr. Lalonde, an email, that it is because we were on a private drive. I believe that's to be arbitrary and quite frankly capricious. And that's why I said I think maybe Ms. Richter could help us out.
Don't you include me in anything?
Okay. The Arbors has 9 fire hydrants in the Arbors on their private roads. And at $55 for the same rate, my guess is their homeowners association is being charged $495 a month. I mean, that would solve the issue, I think, here. If the Arbors is being charged $55 a hydrant to their HOA, then it would seem that it's not an arbitrary or capricious billing to the Links. So, you know, we're similar in the way that we're both on private drives.
We can't control.
Mr. Sanders up.
Let me try to take a shot at this.
Okay,
You live on a private road,
yes.
okay? The township doesn't have any, does the township plow your streets?
No,
Does the township pave your streets?
no,
Does the township have any responsibility for your streets whatsoever?
no, that's part of the reason I come month
Does
after
the
month.
township maintain your fire hydrants?
I think so. We've never maintained them.
Well, maybe we can ask the captain. I mean,
I don't know that.
You are, all right.
We do not maintain them.
Thank you. You do not maintain them. This is what we in the parlance call a private issue. This is not an issue that involves the township at all. This is an issue between your homeowners association, which is a corporation that's incorporated and that has papers filed in Harrisburg. It's a homeowners association, and Aqua. If you got a bill from a utility company that you don't believe you should receive, call Aqua and talk to them about it. The township has no jurisdiction. Even if it wanted to do something, it couldn't.
But I have the second-class township code here.
Okay.
Section 1802, fire hydrants.
Okay, fine. Yeah.
All right, and our board, the Board of Supervisors may pay the cost of fire protection out of the general fund. And that's how our township pays for $12,000 a month for 510 fire hydrants. And
Located on not private streets.
well, and that's
Fire
all,
hydrants.
that's all I'm asking for is confirmation, because
I'm giving it to you. That's why you're not, that's why you're getting a bill from Aqua and the township isn't paying it, because the township doesn't pay your fire hydrants.
Okay, so on the township website, here's a list of all these private roads. So when I went to these private roads and counted the fire hydrants, I can be assured that Wrights Lane and Lincoln Avenue and Turner Avenue and Prospect Avenue, are you confirming for the board?
Well,
that
it's
they
my
are
first
located-
meeting, I don't know
I
enough
know.
about those things to be
Well,
able to tell you,
you-
but I can ask staff, to say whether the township pays for those or not, located on private roads.
We do not pay for any fire hydrants located on private roads.
Thank you, Mr. Craig.
Okay. Ms. Testa was kind enough, she looked into the issue for me and she approached me before the meeting. And I said, well, then when a developer comes in and when my development was built, the township has to decide whether they give paperwork to Aqua to say it's a public hydrant and we're paying, or a private hydrant. So there should be paperwork somewhere that the township submitted to Aqua, according to Ms. Testa, that says the Lynx is responsible for.
None of those facilities that you live in were dedicated to the township or offered, so we don't get involved in that transaction at all. That's between the developer, the HOA, and Aqua. It's a private development.
Okay, and I'm asking to be put on the agenda for next month. My homeowners association would like to present, our treasurer is a developer. Pardon me? It'll take 5 minutes.
Well, it already took 10 minutes tonight for you to fill in the board on the entire situation, and you were told, very respectfully, that it's a private matter. The township can't do anything about it, and the township won't do anything about it, because then they'd be making an exception for your private roads and private hydrants versus everybody else's private roads and private hydrants. So the matter's not going to go on the agenda unless I'm misreading the board grossly, and you've actually had more than 5 minutes to regale us with the whole issue, ask our opinion, and you're now receiving our opinion.
So
that's the end of the discussion.
Good hire. Jeez Louise.
Margie, just to answer, you have every right to ask this question. It isn't the first time you asked it, and I don't think, we've had two legal opinions on this. We've had Kristen Camp before, and now we have Mr. Sanders, and, it is clear that it's private. So what I'm really afraid of as chairman is if we have a meeting like this, first of all, what sort of precedent are we setting? We're in contact with another private development area, without naming names, and they wanted us to do something for them.
I'm not saying that. Can't we just find out if the arborist is
I'm just saying that the chairman
$55
has the floor. Let me just finish, Margie. What I'm just telling you is that, we're considerate, we listened to them, we talked to them about it, we told them this is our understanding, and we can't do this. If you want to do this, that's fine, because once again, you're a private entity, and our hands are not caught. So, if you're asking for us to make special consideration for the Lynx, where we're going to say, you know what, we're going to just take over your fire hydrants, it ain't gonna happen. So that's, I mean, I think that's.
Please.
I sat here calmly for 3 hours. Listen,
No, 4 hours.
from what I've understood is it's not for our benefit. It is for the safety officials' benefit so that the firemen can do their job, that there's a hydrant there. So we could elect to shut it off and not pay it, correct?
Why not? No,
Oh, you
not
can't.
by the code.
Not by the code.
Okay,
Even if
all
it's
right.
private, they have to abide by the
If she-
code.
if she
So
knows
they took it upon themselves.
Then
There's certain things that people have to do. They have to pick up their trash, save as trash. It's the code. You know what I'm saying? Okay.
She could do it.
Doug,
They could do
come
it.
on. It's,
It's a, guys, I don't want to set a precedent where people can't speak. I'd rather them have their
I'm just
say
making a comment.
Okay.
and let them speak. So please, Dr. White, go ahead.
Wait, West Coast Township. Mr. Sander, welcome.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure, nice to meet you.
It's dangerous.
Captain Stone, thank you. The police department did an excellent job. We needed your help. Mom and I, on Friday, they responded. I got a call back within 30 seconds. Thank you. And the board, Casey, you're doing a great job. Thank you for all your efforts.
No, go on.
Be up here all night.
Was a joke.
Are we done? Any questions?
Okay. Any more public comment? No?
I'll make
I have a
a motion
motion
to
to adjourn. Thank you, Mr. Purnell. A second?
Second.
Mary?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, folks, for coming out.